Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course, author interviews. And this week, I have the pleasure of talking to an author who wrote one of the most interesting LitRPG series that I've ever had the pleasure of reading. He writes from such different perspectives. It's interesting to see how he mixes them and how he comes with his ideas. I'm looking forward to talking to him. He's the author of the Last Horizon book series and the Alpha World series. I know he's written a bunch of other things, but that's the stuff he's published that's fit for consumption, apparently. And he's here to talk about the latest series in his book, Forming the Company, Alpha World Book 2, which should be out by the time that you're watching and listening to this. Welcome to the show, Daniel Schinhofen.
Thanks for having me, Ramon.
Thank you very much thank you for being here, my friend. Also, before I forget, I want to mention that you are also having the first book, audiobook of your first book, Last Horizon Beta, out as an audiobook. It should be out again exactly the day that this comes out. So that's very coincidental. Great timing, my friend.
I'd like to say I planned it, and it's all part of an epic scheme to take over the world. However, I found out about it when Tantor decided to just drop it on Audible because reasons. Reasons are always good things to have. Yeah. Okay. So thanks a lot for being here. Now, before we begin, for the folks who do not know who you are, the things that you're doing, can you tell them a little about yourself, Daniel? Let's see, a little about myself. Well, I was born in a small town back in, oh wait, you mean actual interesting stuff. Okay, no, I write books because there weren't stories that I wanted to see written. It's not really a good one, is it? Yeah, no. I worked for many years in the food service industry and was bored out of my head most of the time. So on breaks, I read a lot of things. A lot of things. In fact, Library of Congress had a lot of things. And when I found LitRPG through my friend, the first few books I read, none of them had the group story. They were all solo protagonists going off and having these great adventures. And that made me think, why isn't anybody doing what you should be doing, which is going out with friends? And that's what started me off. That was Last Horizon Beta. And so my background is food, work, sleep. Yes, we're good there.
See, hey, there you go. The pillars of life, food, work, sleep. I'm not sure if taxes go at the back end though. Like they're the thing that knocks those pillars down.
No, that's the dagger that gets stuck in the back of everybody.
Well, there you go. As long as we're clear on that. So thank you for a bit of background about yourself. This is your fourth book that you've written. Do you have any like professional ambitions for a writer? Is this just something you're doing to pass the time, or what is it?
This is probably the one thing that I've always wanted to do in life. Since my mother read me The Hobbit when I was like 6. And I thought, wow, that's awesome. I love that imagery. And I want to do that. And then I wrote many things that if they ever see the light of day, I'll kill the person who put them out. And then I didn't really seriously start writing until LitRPG came along. And it took the two things that I absolutely love, writing and games, and put them together. So now what I'd love to do is do what you did and jump off the bridge and go, I'm a full-time writer. But at the same time, God, that's a scary freaking plunge. So, yes, I want to be a full-time writer. Will it happen? But I'll still write, so people should be happy.
Hey, there you go. I mean, to me, you're a writer when you write things. I know that sounds silly, but it's that impact of you taking the stories that are in your brain, putting them on paper, and someone else reading them. At that point, you're a writer. Whether or not you're a good writer or not is left to the readers, of course. But that to me is a writer. And so to me, you're already a writer. And I certainly hope that you can make a living in, because it's super scary. I'll be honest with you. Months of worrying and planning and convincing my wife. And I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to regret this a lot more if I didn't do it than if I did do it, even if I fail spectacularly. And I happen to have the living situation where I can take that risk and not really lose everything, but not everybody's that way. And so I get it. And so even though you do what you're doing, I mean, I think you're writing at a pretty good pace and your writing is enjoyable to me.
Well, I appreciate the positive reinforcement, because that's one of the few things that keeps a writer going, I like to think. Yeah, I'm not in that position where I could risk without great loss, which is why I'm waiting to see if I can sustain a little bit longer. And, a couple more years, if I can keep it up, then I will. And then maybe I'll do what you did and go, woo!
No, I hear you. It's definitely a plunge, and I'm not sure if I packed my safety parachute along the way, but it's going to be a journey, I hope.
Question: did the backpack say Acme on it?
I no, it was EMAC.
Oh, yeah. Well, you might be fine.
Okay, now let's talk actually about the stuff that you've written. You have 4 books: Alpha, Last Horizons Beta, Last Horizons Live, Alpha World Gamer for Life, and Forming the Company. Now, these are 2 very, very different stories, I should say. Mm-hmm. One is on the Last Horizon series. It is kind of the end of a gamer's life, and the Alpha World series is the beginning of a gamer's life. So how would you describe, if you had to give an elevator pitch, I should say, for Last Horizon Beta first? How would you give that?
Group of friends looking for one last adventure. Really, Beta came from being the idea of, in 30 years, if they finally give us what the story is about, which is full immersion VR, people your age and my age, wouldn't we want that? Wouldn't we be like, yeah, sign me up, I want that? And that was the original point to it. That's what got me writing, was, hey, a group of friends, people, and it's actually based on a group of friends, the Bananas, the guild that I played WoW with, going out for one last hurrah.
Yeah, that's perfect. I like that. Even just that first tagline, a group of adventurers going out for one, or a group of friends going out for one last adventure. Bam, perfect. I think that describes it. I mean, there's a lot more flavor and subtext to your story, of course. But that's good. Give me the elevator pitch for Alpha World then.
I don't know if I can do an elevator pitch for Alpha World without actual spoilers. It is the story of a man who was convicted for a crime he committed out of love for another. And he is given the chance at a life while testing cutting-edge technology.
That's I like that. I'd probably add that it is in a VR MMO. I don't know that's too big of a spoiler for book 1. I think it's on the cover in the synopsis somewhere. But that's pretty good too. I like that. Okay. Where is your stuff published? If people want to just go out and buy them right now?
Amazon. And
Amazon. There you go.
Really, they own the market share of everything.
They do, and there are some very interesting opinions from authors about that. We might talk about it later. But yeah, I have all the links in the show notes for audiobooks and your audiobook, which I'm looking forward to listening to. Have you listened to it yet?
No, because they didn't give me a copy until it goes live.
That is super curious. I don't know that I could have. I think it would have driven me crazy if I knew that somebody was recording my novel and I had no input or no resources to listen to it and to give like notes or anything. Which is why
it was the trade-off involved. I only vaguely kind of considered trying to put out audiobooks for Last Horizon Beta and Live. So when Tantor came along and said, hey, we'll pay you and you just let us take care of it, I went, free money?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm happy it's coming out, but I'm probably as curious, if not more curious, as to what the quality is going to be like. So.
Yeah. Have they given you like any free audiobooks to give out?
No, they've given me my 1 copy to listen to, which I'll get tomorrow.
That is curious. I know from a production standpoint, when I produced, when I basically got an narrator through ECX to do my audiobook for Adventures in Terror Book 1, it really pretty simple process. I mean, it's a little time consuming in that you're talking to someone else and listening to things and giving critique on like different voices. Like the actual setup process was fairly painless. And at the end of it, I got like 28 codes for audiobooks to give out. And I'm like, and they're literally just credits that I've only given like a handful out, but ACX gave me like, we know we don't want to promote this, so here's 20 codes for credits and just give them out. And I'm like, oh, okay. I get to finish them all, but
what stopped me the most from doing my own audiobook was upfront cost. And that for me, at the time before, because I mean, I slowly started considering trying to do it my own right before I put Alpha World 1 out. And even then it was like, it's a decent chunk of money to go out spending that I'm not sure I'm going to get back.
Yeah.
So I was waffling on it when somebody said, hey, I'll give you free money. So
okay, it
free
works
money
out for you.
wins.
Free money always sounds very nice, especially when it's upfront and you have little to no risk as far as like the success of it or the failure is not your business. It's not your responsibility. You don't have to do promotion. You don't have to find somebody to do it and negotiate prices or like listen to tracks and like know, oh, there's a mistake here or there's a click here that you need to remove. And that's cool. And that works for a lot of people. Alternatively, for the ACX, and we're getting into technical stuff already, but for the audiobook ACX stuff, it's like you don't necessarily have to put up money. Like it could be a revenue sharing where like the narrator gets a certain percentage of the royalties and you as an author gets the other half. I think it's like 40% that you split between the two of you. And so I know some people do it that way. So I know I can't remember his name now. Jeff Hayes does that with some audiobook narrators for the community. So there are always alternatives for people who don't want to invest the cash necessarily, but still want to do it. They are going to make less money long term that way, though. The narrator will make more money long term that way, assuming a successful sales, of course. But if you just want all the royalties, you pay up front. It's a risk.
Yeah, Jeff Hayes, the voice of LitRPG.
He likes to be that. I think he's trying really hard to be the voice of LitRPG.
He is.
Go for it, man. I'm like, go for it, dude.
He is.
No, he does a lot of good stuff. He has a lot of good voices. Okay, let's move on to your characters, which are actually a really big part of your stories, as I'm sure they were meant to be. We'll talk a little bit about David, but we're mostly going to focus on your new series, of course, which is Alpha World. Since it's coming on, people are most curious about that. Your other series is finished for now.
Yeah.
I believe, yeah. So we'll talk about David. David is the main character of Last Horizon. What makes him special?
He's an old gamer. I mean, really, that's about the only thing special that I've seen out of that book, than most other lit RPGs, is he's an old gamer.
So experience, and I almost think that he's not. In my mind, David was never just the main character. I always felt like it was the entire group that was the main character for me. Like their interactions, their backstory. Yeah, it was them as the main character, even if though it was told from David's perspective, I guess, or the events around David. It was like everybody in that group was always a major component to the story because they all had different gamer lifestyle perspectives. It was almost memoirs of a gamer in a lot of ways. Because you're telling all these different backstories of all these different groups of these individual stories of like their gaming lives and how they came together and why they're coming together to kind of honor their friend and give him one last adventure. And I always loved that was so different. And I think that's part of what draws people to that particular storyline is that it is different. It's not about the young teen who's having girl troubles or the guy who's transported to a portal world. They're just regular people who have been going through those end of life issues. And they choose, instead of living their life in pain in the real world, you can have an extended time period in a virtual world with your friends and do exciting things and feel like you're making an impact.
Yeah, I have a problem with writing the late teen, early 20 character because most of them are less than intelligent is the nicest way I can say it. They don't have that life experience to draw on that tells them this is a stupid idea. Don't do it.
Yes. On the other side, flip side of the coin, those stupid things become great things you can redeem later.
True. I just have a hard time remembering what it was like being young.
Yes. Me, I've never grown up. I'm slightly smarter, I'd hope, at this age than I was in my teens, but I don't think I'm a lot more mature. Honestly, I mean, I still watch video games. I watch anime, play video games, read a bunch of stories, essentially for extra income and for fun. I write silly stories for a living. So I don't know that I've grown up very much.
It's growing older, but never ever growing up.
Yes, we are all Peter Pans.
Well, yeah, except I'm actually growing older.
Oh, well then. We're the Peter Pan in Hook, not the Peter Pan in the animated version.
I will take that.
There you go. Okay, now that's Last Horizon. On to Alpha World. Alpha World's main character is Seamus, and how do you say his gamer name? Albert. Albert. Okay, so we have Seamus, who's in the game. His game handle. His name is Albert. Tell me about him.
What makes him a special main character? He's a man who committed murder and freely admitted that he did. It's really not a whole lot special about him, except he's given the chance to basically see how long a person can survive in full immersion.
Yes. I often, in a way, I kind of think of it as, I don't want to say the American story. In England, people were convicted of crimes and they were sent, to colony continents like Australia or the Americas for kind of a chance at a new start. And I kind of felt that that's sort of Albert's story. He's a man who's convicted. He's going to be sentenced to death, I think, in the story. But instead, he changes. He just signs up for a beta program where he's going to test a full immersion program. It may hurt him. It's hinted at. It never comes to anything yet. But he's basically being sent to another world to live there full time with occasional breaks. But he has a chance at starting over emotionally and physically, I guess, in a way, since it is full immersion. And I think that to me is what makes it interesting, because if you had a new chance at life, if you could just start with a completely clean slate, even if you're powerless, what would you do with it? And he makes some very interesting choices.
Yeah, I actually didn't put the connection for all of book one almost together for it almost being the Australia bit, or even, hey, let's send the condemned criminal to Mars and make them build something for us. But it's the government got behind it in book one for one very important reason. The cost of incarcerating a person for life is actually kind of high. Yeah. So if we could just strap them into a pod and feed them basically nutrients and just exercise the muscles every once in a while, which would cut that down to like maybe a fifth, the government would be like all over that, especially if, hey, look, we can give them a virtual prison so they don't even get to enjoy life.
Yep. And that's
Why would the government not want to be in the world?
That's sort of the premise of Way the Shaman, book one, at least. In that's what they do there. And he goes, he goes way further into like, you're the beta tester. He would be like, oh, this has been done for like 20 years and this is the way it is. But I like your beginning story because he feels unique and he feels like even though he's a murderer, you still feel empathy for him because of why he murdered and the fact that he's like a righteous murderer. And that he did it. He's like, I did it. I gave myself up. I didn't contest it. I, pled guilty. I'm fully aware of my crime and I'm willing to take the consequences. It's just what had to be done. Yep. Although there are hints in book two about maybe things not being exactly the way he thinks they are, which I thought was kind of cool. I see you smiling and you're like, oh, you caught that. Like, yeah.
Well, I figure any intelligent person will catch that.
Oh,
so
thanks.
I'm not surprised you do. However, yeah, that storyline, that's Seamus or Albert's main storyline for the character, and that advances more in book three and will advance throughout the series until it has the conclusion it's supposed to, which should happen before I get to the end of the series, because the end of the series is the beginning of the series.
Oh, okay.
Where he first goes into the game.
Wait, so the end of this series is the beginning of another series?
No, the end of this, the end of Alpha World, will bring him and a group or an army at that point full circle back to the Forgotten Prison.
Okay, so the beginning of when he started in the game.
Yes.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay. Well, I always figured like the Forgotten Prison was going to be like the big end game kind of stuff because the content was a little too high for a starter character. But I thought, oh, okay, this is foreshadowing in a big way.
Yeah, I normally don't write the, hey, let's go overthrow the Dark Lord, and it's really not. This is built. Alpha World has gotten some bad reviews because people call it a ripoff of WoW. Well, I played WoW for millions of years. I like to think that it's different enough that people would at least not murder me for it. However, if you ever played Wrath of the Lich King when it first came out, Arthas kept appearing in like every friggin' zone and you couldn't hit him. it's kind of like that. You know who the big bad guy is going to be.
Yeah.
It's just, how are they going to get to him? How is it going to end? But I don't want that to be, hey, we need to go power grind ourselves because we need to get there now.
Yeah. It's you're playing long term. This is a much larger story that you've planned out. This is not a 1 or 2 book series. This is multiple. And so you can't just have him being so powerful at the end of book 1 or 2 that he's like, oh, why aren't you going to go defeat the Dark Lord? It seems like a thing you should do. And even in this case, I'm like, why does he need to defeat the Dark Lord? It doesn't necessarily seem super horrible yet.
No, the people have asked me how many books in the series. I can't answer that. There's at least 4, and that's if I greatly time jump things. But I don't have a definite. But this isn't a, hey, this is going to break the world in any way, shape, or form. It's not going to impact the real world. It's not going to break Alpha World itself. It's the end game raid, just like in any MMO we play today.
Yeah,
that is what it's all going for.
Guys going on an adventure, which is fine, and as long as people understand that going into your story, I think they're okay with it. When I read the reviews for a lot of LitRPG stories, including my own, it's like people for some reason think this is like real literature, like it's like a real, author story, like people who professional writers for some reason, and it's like they expect things like plot and story arcs and character development and character driven stories or whatever. I'm like, I don't know what these words mean. So I'm not sure why you expect them to be in my story. And for me as a reader, as a consumer, I'm like, I'm used to video games like not having like a real defined plot point, and I'm okay with that. It's about the journey, it's about the adventure, it's about, and yes, there can be those things in there, but it's not necessary for enjoyment for a good portion, I think, of the LitRPG community. In that we're cool with that kind of stuff because we're used to it from video games.
My books are mostly character driven. I mean, if you think about it, the action scenes in Last Horizon are mediocre, and they really are. I have a problem with action scenes. It's all about the character, the journeys they're taking, how they interact with people. So, but the whole, hey, we have this big thing we have to go take care of, overthrowing the Dark Lord, saving the continent, stopping the evil AI rogue program that's going to somehow destroy all technology and trap us all inside the game. Not really my cup of tea.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, in our community, I think there's more than enough room for all the stories. If you want that, there are stories like that within the community. They're really good. I love them. But there's also just people who go in adventure stories or like almost little, short stories collected together in like streamlined. I'm like, oh, those are fine too, because they both have places in our gamer mentality and our experience. There are main quests and there are side quests. They're all valid experiences, and sometimes those side quests can be as interesting, if not more interesting, than the main quests. I think like Witcher 3, some of those side quests, like, oh, those are great.
Witcher 3, level 4. Here's a quest for you. It's level 30. Go have fun.
Yeah, there you go. And they'll let you do it too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the fun part of these kind of, and especially the open world stories like that we kind of create. Like, oh, you can go do that. If you want to be level 10 and take on level 30 raid bosses, go have a good time dying. It's okay. We'll allow it within the context of the story in the RPG setting. Yeah. They're just consequences, and that's cool. And in other stories, it's not like they'll make sure that character just happens to have that magical sword before he goes, fights the Dark Lord. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense within like those contexts.
Yeah, the magic MacGuffin that saves the day. That's
fine. I prefer that to be intelligence.
I prefer it to be hard work.
I'll see. There you go.
You can have a character who does stupid things, as long as they're not grossly, overly stupid. As long as they show that they can learn from it and they can keep trying, it's still a good story. Okay. But hey, by the way, you just happen to know God, and God steps in and smites the Dark Lord for you, and good job. Meh.
Not as engaging sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's just what you're in the mood for, but sometimes it's not, and they're perfectly valid stories either way. Okay, what are you working on right now?
Editing the first book of a new series and writing Alpha World 3.
So what's the name of that new series, if I can ask?
Apocalypse Gates is the name of the series. The first book will be Rapture.
Can you say what that is about currently?
The first book is very much zombie apocalypse. At the end of book 1, something very, very large flies overhead, and that's when they realize it's not just zombies.
Now, is this a LitRPG story or is it something else?
It's a LitRPG story. In fact, the mechanics behind that one are a mix of like Fallout 4 style base building and what is the name of the book? I can't think of the name of the book. It's very much 5 basic attributes that you can raise, powers, magic, and things you can buy, and then getting a community up and running. Because the whole premise for book 1 is the main character trying to get parts of humanity together so they can survive the rapture and also the apocalypse gates overall.
So you're throwing a whole lot of end of the world kind of stuff together in the LitRPG mix. Now, so this is a world with RPG mechanics in it, not I'm in a video game or VR thing.
No, it is actually a video game. He is
okay. So
the first chapter is him finding out that he died.
Okay.
And he was cryogenically frozen. And then the company that had his brain frozen went bankrupt. And another company was able to buy the remains, where they then digitally uploaded him into a system. They have their own reasons why, which will come out further and further along.
Yeah.
But basically they tell him, you get 1 life to start with. You can try to survive, or you can let the zombies eat you. We don't mind. Go at it.
Yes, that very much sounds like who was it? It was I can't remember. Oh, it's another author. He did something very similar where aliens take over and they're like, go on this adventure. If you lose, if all humanity loses, we take over. So feel free to die as soon as possible. Michael Scott Earl. That's Michael Scott Earl. Yeah.
No, Scotty Fudge.
Scotty Fudge. Oh, you're right.
Earth.
Oh God, I can't believe I got that wrong. 2 points.
I can't think of the name. Something Earth.
I think it's Galactic Fist of Legend.
That's it. Galactic Fist of Legend, book 1. Yeah.
So I recovered points at this point, which you're right. It's Scotty Fudge.
Yes. Actually, I love that series. It is irreverent as all hell. Mine is a little more serious.
Yeah, he does a lot of good irreverent humor in there as well.
Yes, he does.
But yeah, I also thought about doing something similar where we're a world, but it's also RPG mechanics in the game world, or real life RPG mechanics, whatever it is. So lots of fun stuff coming out.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to reading that one as well. Okay, so you've given us hints about your new stuff. You've given us great information about your upcoming series. Now, from book 1, we talked about the premise there. Do you want to tell us anything about how things change for the main character in book 2 of that series of Alpha World?
Nothing really changes. I mean, he is basically stuck in Alpha World, and I mean, he has to deal with you. If you read book 1, and if you haven't by now, then why haven't you? But the end of book 1 deals with the reveal that somebody he knows is different. And it's dealing with that is the first couple chapters. How do you deal with the fact that somebody you have feelings for has either lied to you or led you on or hasn't been completely forthcoming? Book 2 revolves more around forming the company, and that comes down. Book 3 is known as Alpha Company, which is the guild that ends up being made in book 2.
Right.
So there's not. If you're looking for a curveball, don't. I am going to throw it slow and easy over the plate, and if you can't hit it, it's not my fault.
Yes, no, it is not. I put that in my review actually. Of if you're expecting a lot of huge events to happen in this story, don't have managed expectations that this is a group of people having adventures. There's some expansion of social interest within the community on this online world. In this world, the main character has to deal with some emotional issues of, who's this person that I've fallen in love with. But don't expect more, and you'll have a really good time if you like that kind of story. And I think that's what a lot of what we were talking about is managing expectations. If you put on your synopsis, this is epic, this is mind-blowing, the world's gonna end unless our hero saves the world, and then it's something different, yeah, they get mad. But if you're upfront about it, I'm like, did you not read the synopsis on the front by the pretty picture?
My biggest complaints for my books have been that they are boring, they're slow. I want them slow. If I wanted fast-paced books, I'd go find fast-paced books. I like a story that takes time. As long as there is growth for the character or the group, something that makes me still care about them, then I'd read them. So that's, of course, what I write.
Yeah, and I think that also has to do a lot with our background as gamers, because I've spent hundreds of hours on The Witcher or on some other RPG game, and I've literally spent hours hunting and stalking in like Last Horizon's Zero Dawn, like traveling across the plains and like trying to find this one monster, like repeatedly dying. So I'm used to the grind and the time that goes into that grind sometimes. And so to see it in like a novel, I'm like, oh, this feels very familiar and comforting. It's like coming home to my MMO world, MMO home.
Yeah, I've played more RPGs and put more hours into RPGs and JRPGs than is probably healthy for a human being. Yeah. But it's what I enjoy doing. And then when you couple that with the fact that I've played and run countless pen and paper tabletop RPG games, that's just the way my stories come out.
Yeah, and all that defines, I thought all that really informs how we write and how we tell our stories, why there is such a love within this community for the genre. It's because we all have very similar backgrounds of being passionate about these games, these RPG games or tabletop stories, or whatever background comes to. We all have this common interest of this love of these mechanics and the story that goes along with it, and we're accepting of it not being perfect and it not being particularly literary sometimes or super fancy, and it's okay. These are still enjoyable things to have. Now, speaking of LitRPG, which is what the podcast is supposed to be about,
of course,
how did you find LitRPG, and let me ask you first, what define LitRPG? What is LitRPG to you?
LitRPG is, well, God, that's an argument that's been raging everywhere for a while now. LitRPG for me is books that revolve around game-like mechanics. It doesn't have to be levels, as long as there's some kind of progression. It could be skills. You can do away with skills entirely and just make it levels that go up. As long as there's something that shows the main character progressing in some noticeable way, whether they control what they get or it's just this is what you get at this level, it's fine as long as there is some clearly defined path that's actually adhered to and isn't thrown away for the expediency of the story, then I consider it LitRPG.
Hey, there you go. And I agree with everything that you've said. I think I know like a long time ago. I feel like I've been doing this for decades sometimes. And it's like I think a couple years ago when the LitRPG group on people first started, that like the people that were like, what is this genre? What do we love about it? How do we define it to people who don't know anything about this kind of stuff? And they came up with like 2 simple rules that were later modified, caused some controversy and some breakups for people. But they came up with these modified rules, and they're really simple. They're just boundaries of like, one, it's set in a RPG world or a game with RPG mechanics that are clearly described. They're not hidden. So not like those stories about video games where you don't actually know what's happening or that it's actually a video game. And 2, the characters they progress in power by obviously stated means, which means, again, not hidden stuff. Doesn't matter what kind of progression it is, skills, stats, ranks, whatever. As long as there is that power curve, which is very much in line with the RPG worlds we were familiar with. That's it. Those 2 things. And yet for some reason, when I'm reviewing stories and authors get really mad when I say, your story's not LitRPG, they get really pissed off. And they're like, it is too. You're just being a jerk. You're being an elitist and trying to tell people what you think about this genre. And I'm like, I didn't make these rules up. The community did. And it always strikes me as something because they're so simple. And yet, for some reason, and this more happens with like people who aren't familiar with the genre and they're trying to either find their way in or convert their story in some way into the genre. Yeah. They just, for some reason, they get really mad about these guidelines or these small little things that say, oh, this is LitRPG and it's different from video games fiction or virtual reality fiction or just fiction in general because of these particular things. And that's it.
Well, yeah, I got a couple of dings for Last Horizon Beta because it's apparently some people like the term LitRPG light. Yeah. Because the game mechanics are not in your face. You don't get to see every single skill that gets to pick that they can pick. Their progression if like I started as a strength-based character, I don't throw stats out there because that story was supposed to be about the group of friends going on the adventure, not how powerful they can become.
Right. It's very much a social story.
Yeah, it's the lit RPG elements are still there. They still gain levels. They still gain abilities. But it's not, hey, here's 4 pages of the latest stat upgrades.
Yeah. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be. It just that's why those guidelines are in that. As long as there's some progression of power, like in any RPG game or any kind of tabletop game, that kind of defines it. That's let's say for that second portion of it, and the first portion is just you're in an RPG world, whether it's the real world or a video game world. We don't really care as long as those mechanics are there and they're not hidden away. We know what's happening. That's it. Any kind of story you want to tell, doesn't matter. Zombies, apocalypse, fantasy, sci-fi, cyberpunk, whatever. You just make it entertaining, and the readers will tell you if it's good or not. But those are it, and you definitely hit those with both your books. And to me, it's just always surprising how mad some authors get. And I'm like, I'm not telling you what to write. I'm just telling you that it's not this thing necessarily. And maybe you're close, maybe you weren't, but it is what it is. And but I think just those guidelines and just our genre has so much opportunity for storytelling that there can be a great variety. There can be light LitRPG or crunchy LitRPG or whatever you want to call it. I just call them good stories or not, personally. And it just, there's so many opportunities because we have so much great of a background to pull from, so many video games, so many tabletop stories, that to me, the variety is almost infinite. And I love seeing new stuff when it comes out, but it's still LitRPG, but it's also fresh and cool and neat. And I think your stories do that in a lot of ways because you're playing from different social perspectives, which not everybody does. A lot of people focus on just the mechanics or just the adventure, but especially in your first series, Last Horizon, it's about people. It's about older people who are retired, and some people are just ready to die, and they're choosing to spend that time doing the thing that they love, which I would hope I would do in life, which is play video games and hang out with their friends in a virtual world where they can feel powerful again, especially considering in real life they're not necessarily anymore. And in this one, it is that a man has a new chance of life, and that's the core of the story, and the mechanics around it are really cool and they're interesting, and the social stuff is nice and all the stuff is there for progression, but at its core it's still something very interesting and social, and that's okay.
I always consider the game mechanics for these two series, the game mechanics are very much a backdrop to the characters. They're there because they're important. In Last Horizon, they were important because it was the first game. That's why you can tell. I mean, the mechanics of the game aren't polished because it's the first time virtual reality, full immersion happened for that quote unquote version of Earth. And so the game mechanics aren't polished. You wouldn't expect them to be because everything by and large got dumped into that. So it should be just a backdrop. There shouldn't be, hey, let's go page through 50 pages of all the different skills. For Alpha World, I increased that to a degree because of the game world the main characters put in. It wanted basically an MMO we have today.
Right.
That kind of system. And the reasons for that are, this is the first time they've taken, for, again, that version of Earth, AIs and put them in charge of a full immersion virtual reality game to see just how adept the AIs could be with helping guide them, which is why the classes and abilities are the way they are. It's a very strict guideline. This way, the game company can get good critical data on just how well the AIs are doing helping progress the game world. Because there is no, oh, by the way, I took 4 levels of mage, 2 levels of rogue, and now I'm an assassin who can't be seen and can kill you with magic darts.
Right.
So the game mechanics for me are always backdrops for the story.
And I did notice that in book 2, you changed some mechanics. I thought, oh, he's doing an update in the story. I'm like, based on, I'm curious, like, where that was based on, like, actual reader feedback from book 1, or if it was just like, oh, I had always intended to these mechanics to change in book 2.
2 of the updates that happened in book 2 were from actually beta readers that said, hey, what about this? And I went, you know what, you make a good point. I can do that. But that update is endemic of, hey, this is the brand new MMO that's come out. Which MMO doesn't go, oh, by the way, we missed this and people are breaking things.
Yeah.
We need to fix them.
Yeah, that happens in every MMO I've ever played, whether it's in beta or in the full version, especially on day one of going live. It's like, oh, there's another 20-hour patch I got to download because there are a bunch of bug fixes that they never included with the original code.
Which is why there's an update. I think it's 2 weeks into the actual game being live, because it happens. Yeah. It happens in real life, so it should happen. If the book is supposed to emulate real life, then it should also happen.
Yeah, those things should happen, absolutely. And that's just new content, new DLC, which I'm always surprised that a lot of like VR-centric games or like stories, LitRPG stories in like a VR world, they don't do updates very often. Sometimes, like their world is set there, let their AI control things, and but there were never like any patch notes. And I'm like, it seems like a wasted opportunity. Like, oh, you can just shift things suddenly in your story. Like, oh, you could nerf a certain class and make another class better based on content, and it seems more realistic as far as video games can go that way.
If the AIs are not controlling the different abilities, and it's like I said, for Alpha World, it's very set, then it should be patch notes because it's supposedly the devs going in and fixing things.
Right.
For something a little more open, I'm blanking on names at the moment. It would make more sense if the AIs are actually control of all the game mechanics for things to suddenly shift. But that only works for me if it's an enclosed system, if I can't log out.
Right.
Because if I'm playing the max level rogue and I've gotten used to all these abilities, and then all of a sudden all my abilities get nerfed, I'm logging out. And you know what? I might not log in for a while because you guys just fucked me hard.
Yep, that happens. Like I said, different story opportunities. Like I said, they present these different conflicts, present different story opportunities. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. So back to LitRPG, you said when you first encountered LitRPG, it became something that you really liked. What was the first story that led you down the LitRPG rabbit hole?
My friend gave me, he introduced me to Ultra World by D. Russ. And the first book I enjoyed. We'll leave that there. The second book I read was Chaos Seeds Book 1, which by that time I just started to write Last Horizon Beta. And by the time I started reading Chaos Seeds Book 1 is when I realized I haven't, it's just basically two main characters who aren't with friends. And I went, this sounds really good. And then I started looking around. I didn't have time to read so much at that point, but I looked at other stories out on the market and realized there wasn't a group-based LitRPG that I had found, so which really solidified yes, this is the story I want to tell. So those are the first two. If you go for the first RPG book I ever read, it was not classified as that, but it would have been Dream Park.
Oh, okay. I've seen it. I have not read it. Oh, I own it. When I first started in the genre, I ended up buying like a ton of books from like the 80s and the 90s and the 70s. They're like, is this LitRPG? I can't tell, and I can't look at it digitally. So I ended up buying like used copies, and I found them really hard to get into because they were just written differently. Like the storytelling way they told story, there's like a huge lead up, and there's a lot of setup, and I'm like, this is not. Get me to the game world. That's always my complaint for like those kind of earlier stories is that they don't get you there. And it's a product of the time in that the VR game stuff was not important. It was there was much different focus upon those stories than they are in current LitRPG. But I heard you saying some of them are very interesting though.
Dream Park was the first one, and then Caverns of Socrates by McKiernan was probably the second.
Had that one
and
too.
Then of course. And then I've started in on my friend said, hey, here's Ultra World. Read this. And like I said, first book,
very
okay.
Yeah.
Second book and on, I plead the fifth.
Yeah. They exist and they sell copies.
Good for him. I support any writer who is ballsy enough to actually put their material up on the market.
Yes, it does. It does take a certain level of ballsiness, I gotta say, because millions of people write these stories, or they write stories in general, but they, for some reason, and it does make sense to me because I'm not a writer, that why wouldn't you just put it out there? If you put so much work into it, even if you don't think it's perfect, put it out there so people can look at it and review it and see it, and you can grow as an author that way, either from criticism or from adulations. You can see what you're doing, and you can see where you possibly need to go and to grow. But if you never take that step of putting it out there, you lose an opportunity for growth.
Which brings me to when I wrote Beta, I actually think I sat on that book for a while, because editing, I hate editing. And the people who edit for me hate editing, because I can't at the moment afford it. Like, hey, here, edit this for me, and here's a couple $1,000. So Beta, my goal for that, when I decided, okay, it's as good as I'm going to get it right now, I'm going to put it out there, was let one person enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. And then it sold, and then it sold, and then it sold, and I went, what? That many people actually wanted to read it? Okay.
Yep. So there you go. No, I hear that. And that's a very common story in our community, in that the best authors, the ones that are the most beloved, are people who are not professional writers, who haven't had a ton of training in literature writing, and they're just fans who had a story and they put it out there and it resonated with people for whatever reason. That story made sense to people, and it made them get that feeling that they have playing video games or doing tabletop games, which they might not have time for anymore. And that's the story that I love, and that's the core of the community that I think presents the greatest opportunities. That everyday people, janitors, IT guys, people who just are regular dudes who just happen to love a thing, they put their story and they find success. And some people are just going to turn it for a time, and then they just enjoy the extra income, but it's still basically something that they're amateurs at, but they have success at it anyways, because of the great community that we have of enthusiasts, of people who just love RPGs and video games and VR tech and a bunch of other tech stuff, just enjoy the stories too.
Yeah, the fans, which I consider myself a huge fan of LitRPG, because it combines the two things I love, which are video games and books. It's such a niche community at the moment, but I think it's gaining speed, because there are a lot of people my age who play video games and can't anymore, and LitRPG gives them the ability to feel like they're playing a game again while they're reading a book. And I have to stop myself from being critical, because as the writer part of me says, that person put effort and time and soul into this thing, and for whatever reason I'm not connecting with it. So instead of going out and bashing those people, which I wish more people would take this to heart, just leave them alone. It's something they loved. Don't bash them for it. If you have a small piece of constructive criticism, like, hey, you did this with this one character, I really didn't like it, but overall the story was good, that's interesting. That is something I can look at. But hey, you had a shower scene in your book, this is porn. Not constructive criticism.
That is an opinion, but it's not particularly constructive. It's just a point of view, basically, and I get that. And that's one of the things I try to do as a review of literature, saying, "Oh, this book has sex. Just be aware of that." Or this has a lot of cursing. This is a curse fest. Just letting you guys know in advance in case that offends you. Or this has whatever. And just I try to be constructive, but occasionally I get mad when I feel like people are, I don't want to say cheating the system or just trying to make a cash grab, but it happens, and it's sometimes pretty obvious. But I really do, as a reviewer, like, I get that this is your thing that you do for a living sometimes, or this is just a story you're telling. I try to be constructive, I think, and I hope I come across that way.
You come across as very fair to me. You really do. I have watched probably not all of your podcasts, because I didn't go back.
Yeah, it's okay.
Like the earliest ones, but you've been very fair. I think you've probably been more than fair to my books. You could have rated them lower, and I would have been like, "Aw." But every book you've done, it's your opinion, which people need. As much as I like to say the Gospel of Ramon, it's still an opinion. And for I think you reviewed one just last week, where there was very much dark, angry, and rapey type things going on. And I understand why you gave that a low review. and I can't remember the name of the book at the moment. But for other people out there, they might be like, "Oh my God, that was amazing."
Yeah. And I get that.
Which is why your reviews are very fair. Because you say, "This is what it was about. This is what I thought about it." But you at least give people the basically synopsis and bits of it so they can then go out and decide for themselves.
Yeah, like for those in particular, like, this is not for me. This is not the kind of story I enjoy reading. Maybe you do, and that's cool. There's some people like a dark story. Some people like a really dark protagonist that's super violent and does these alternative things or these choices that they wouldn't do in life. For some people, video games are very much about that. They like playing the dark story path where they murder villages of children or whatever. I've never been that kind of guy, but I understand that for some people it's a release valve for darker thoughts that they may have in life, or just they want to explore a different point of view. And that's what RPGs are about for a lot of people, just being different people. Like I play girls sometimes in these video game RPGs. That's pretty common. It doesn't mean I'm secretly want to be a woman.
No, it's because you want to watch them walk across the screen.
Yeah, very much so. Also, I usually make those female characters when I play them like a redhead, because like, oh, my wife's a redhead, so I feel like I'm playing a game with her. And so there's also those other just aspects. So I get that not everybody has the same reasons for reading these stories or playing video games a certain way, and I respect that. At the same time, I'm also honest about these things. It's not for me, but you may enjoy it. So I try to be honest and at least balanced in that way. But yeah, they're just my opinions, folks. It is what it is. Yeah. Okay. RPG stuff. So our genre has a lot of RPG mechanics. More the merrier, in my opinion. I love learning about detailed skill trees and number crunching and like, just all these different options, even if not, characters take them. How much research do you do as a writer for your stories, either, social constructs or characters driven stuff or RPG mechanics? How much research do you do?
Depends on the story. Last Horizon, I had all my research because, like I said, that's based off of people I have gamed with. The main characters are people I've gamed with. The David and oh man, I can't remember my own characters' names.
It happens when you have like 30 or 40.
So when I know all of them, and I made sure I talked to them and said, look, I'm going to make a parody of you. I'm going to take your traits, and I'm probably going to amplify them a little bit. And they all said, go ahead. And I went, okay. It was.
Can I get that in writing?
I have it in writing from many of them, actually. Alpha World, I sat down, and I didn't do it for every class, but I did it for the summoner. I broke out all 100 levels of what increases when, and then I went through and wrote out all the different ability choices that he gains at the 5-level increments. So I have all that plotted. So I know exactly what he gets when. Now, I didn't choose out the abilities ahead of time because my stories always seem to deviate from what I want them to. Right. But I know what all the choices are. So when I get to that point when I'm writing, it's very much going to be, okay, what would this character think he would need now?
Based on the circumstances that he's in a lot of times.
Yes. Yeah. The thing I love about LitRPG, especially when you can see what the choices are, is every one of those choices means a potentially different story. Especially for your more open world things like Chaos Seeds or your world adventures on Terra. Every choice can so change the entire context of the story. For Apocalypse Gates, I had to do even more. And the reason why? There are cars and guns involved. Two things that, though I like them, I am in no way, shape, or form able to give a speech about. However, I have friends. I have acquaintances that say they're my friends, those poor people, who have been nice enough to give me advice when I said, hey, I need like a 1960s sports car. And they went, this, and it's going to have this engine, and it would have these struts, and it would have this alternator. And I went, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't need all that yet.
I just need to make a model. Hold on.
Or, hey, I need a really good submachine gun that I can mod out. Okay, you want this gun, or maybe this one, or this one, and then you could do these different things. Okay, send me an email, please. And so for Apocalypse Gates, I put way more thought into the accessories that can go on with it than any other book I've written to date. But if that arc continues, I shudder to think of what my 5th or 6th series might look like for research.
Yeah, like months and months of planning. No, I'm seriously in the same place because I decided to outline book through Adventures in Terra, and I'm like brainstorming ideas for like an entirely new series that's set in like other world, but as RPG mechanics. And the thought about guns came across, like, wait, if he's in the real world, why couldn't he just use a gun instead of like a sword? Because I'm used to the fantasy stuff, or like, you know, laser guns, which are very much just make them whatever you want to make them. But like if you're introducing things that people are going to be familiar with, you need detail. Otherwise, they're going to call, you know, BS and say, no, that's not what that would be, or that's not how you would mod that out, or that you couldn't really do that with that particular weapon or modern machine thing. And I'm like, oh man, that's right. I'd have to do it, which led me to be like, I wonder if I could like expense like a trip to the gun range.
Well, like I said, luckily I have friends, acquaintances that I call friends, who have all that kind of knowledge, which was a godsend, because I used him for, hey, here's a chapter that includes like this section. Do me a favor and look at it.
Yep. Hey, pick the. I always like talk to the smart people who specialize in things and pick their brains. They have decades of research that they've done. Use the resources. You're using your gaming resources. Why not use their gun and car resources? For me, things I know nothing about either. I'm like, I'm a gamer. I play with pixelated guns, not real ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hear you. So lots of research, and you're doing lots more for your upcoming series. So I'm always, yay. I mean, for me, my perspective as a reader, I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
As a reader, I'm always interested in new books.
Yeah, so there we go. We're on the same page. I always like the fact that we're both readers and writers of stuff that we love. It's a very interesting combination, because then you have to balance out: am I reading today, or am I writing? And I'm like, choices.
Not a balance I have to make. I read during my break at work, and I write during like every single moment of my free time. So, in fact, this interview is actually removing writing time. So, everybody blame Ramon.
It's called promotional time, which you should have slotted in for your books. It should be like, I've written it, I'm editing. You schedule editing time, you schedule writing time, you should schedule promotion time. Otherwise, nobody finds your stuff. And this is what we're doing here. So it's totally allowable. People, please don't murder me.
Murder Ramon. It's his fault. Alpha World 3 would be done, except I did an interview with Ramon. That's why it was delayed 8 months. His fault. Okay. Totally legit.
I think you should put that in the cover, like on the inside part. This would have come out sooner if not for. And then you can give them my my email address so they can send out complaints there, and virtual email bombs.
Virtual email bombs. I'm a big fan of virtual high fives. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of virtual email bombs.
With one comes the other, in my opinion. You can't have the good stuff without the bad stuff in the world.
Okay, fine. Don't murder Ramon, because then I won't have podcasts and I won't know what books are coming out. And actually, now that I think about it, that would be horrible. Yeah, no murdering Ramon, people.
That would be horrible for everybody.
Shower him with money, shower him with praise. Don't shower him with bombs.
We should have that inscribed somewhere. Yeah.
You can get a plaque and put it on the wall behind you.
That's it. That's going to be my new refrigerator magnet. Shower me with praise and shower with me with money, not with bombs. Yeah. Okay. We talked a little bit about your writing schedule already. You said you basically you consume during your lunch hour, and you write at all other times. Is that like a 7-day a week thing? Do you have like a day to recharge? What's your writing schedule like?
I don't have a schedule. If I have free time, before I go to work on my work days, I am normally in front of my computer typing, and I would say writing, but it's more typing, because I've gone back and read what I've written before and then gone, oh God, no, delete that. The one day I kind of get away is on Sundays. Sundays I go over to my friend's house, and he is currently the GM for our tabletop game. So I at least get spared having to write and run a game. So that is my day away. But even then, on Sundays, I have still knocked out 5,000 words. Oh God. It's completely unhealthy, but it's fun.
Yeah, I would love to write 5,000 words. I think I've done it a few times. Even though I'm doing this full time, I'm also doing this full time, which is the podcasting thing and the reading thing. And so very much in my mind, I'm consumer, I'm a podcaster, and then in third, I'm a writer. And I'm trying to increase the writing portion without without, because there's so many LitRPG books to read every week. It's like, I think I have 8 this week, and a new one came out just today. And I'm like, oh man, I can't. How do you read 8 books and still write? And I'm like, it's just a balancing act, especially with me also trying to self-improve and like become an actual better writer, like figuring out what these plot points that people keep referring to. So it's a very interesting mix for me, but I always appreciate that somebody who's working full time and is a reader can still find time to write. I'm like, oh, he can do it. Why can't I?
Well, for you, it'd be harder because you read the book. If I read about 15 to 20% of the book, and for whatever reason it's just not catching with me, I stop reading it. For you, this being, the whole, I give you a review on it, it wouldn't be good for you to read 20% of it and then go, meh.
No, unless it's very much like 20% into, I'm like, this is not LitRPG, and like I skip forward, like, nope, not LitRPG, the rest of it, no. Occasionally that's been the case. Like, I read a story that was like the infinite mind of the world's mixture or something. I can't remember the real title, but it sounded really like high-minded like that. And there's a picture of like a brain on the cover. I'm like, and I read the first like 15, 20, 30%. I'm like, there's no game yet. It's kind of set in its virtual simulation, but there's no game stuff. And I'm like, this probably isn't LitRPG. And I'll fast forward, or I'll do a search function like levels, like game mechanic, RPG stuff. And if it's nothing there, I'm like, okay, this is probably a fine story. I'm enjoying, but it's really not LitRPG. And I'll skim through to make sure. But sometimes it's just blaringly obvious, like this person either doesn't know what LitRPG is, which is fine. I don't, we don't always understand what we're getting into when we put a tag on something, or they're just, saying, oh, this might be like it. So I've heard good things about this group. I'll tag it and we'll see what happens. And either way, it's like, it is what it is. But sometimes I just can't waste time reading a 500-page novel when it's most blaringly not LitRPG.
Yeah.
But that's rare. Very rare. Okay. Man, you said that you type on a computer.
Yep.
Oh, you talked about where your ideas come from already. You are this is a question. You a plotter or a pantser? Do you outline, or do you just see where your ideas take you?
I'm a discovery writer, which I guess you call a pantser. I normally have the basic, I'd like to start here. And of course I am going to start there because it's the start. And this would be where I'd want to be at the end. And then everything else in between, I have found that the few times I have tried to put together a plot outline or a structure, you're going to fit inside this frame. My characters always break the frame somehow and decide to go left to Albuquerque. As much annoying as that is sometimes. And I want to drag them back with a hook.
Do you think that's because of your background as a GM?
Yes, it is. In my opinion, I have had so many players break a game on me and had to just follow along and fly that for me, it's at this point, it's just second nature. My characters in my books, by and large, are either caricatures of friends, or they are they're characters that I've had at a gaming table before, which means I have a rough idea of how they're going to work. I've known them long enough that I know in this situation they're going to do Y. So when they think, okay, they're going to do Y, and they suddenly do Z, it takes a little bit of just what happened, and then I follow along and see if they ever get back to Y.
And you hope for the best sometimes, because sometimes you have, as a GM, I've heard stories like you'll have like this 10-page story, like tons of notes. We want your plot to go, and your characters just don't do it, or they murder an important character that's supposed to give them a quest or something, and the entire thing falls apart. I think it was my new read Justin Miller, who was like, I was in this game one time, and another player literally destroyed the entire world. And he blew, we all got a bunch of levels and it was great, but the GM was so pissed off. And I'm like, oh, that kind of happens sometimes in those tabletop stories.
The last time I had plotted out an actual like 6-month campaign arc for my group, the second time we met, it was broken by the doctor jumping out the window to grab the bad guy so he wouldn't get away. The pacifist doctor jumped out the window to tackle the bad guy so he wouldn't get away, because the bad guy was injured and he had to fix that. So my entire 6-month arc was broken on the second weekend of playing. So I've been there.
Yeah. Hey, if you make the roll, man, it happens.
I've been there, which is why at this point, when I do GM, I'm used to just my players. This is where I'm starting you. These are the kind of plot points these are your hooks. Please bite one and don't decide that none of them look appetizing. But I've dealt with that too. That's why I Discovery write by and large, because I'm used to people just going off and doing whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, and that happens in a story. Some like that happened with book 2 for me. Like I had very clear goal in mind for my characters. Like you need to get to this place because you got to find out where the kobolds are. You got to decode that manuscript or ledger or whatever. But they just kept taking these weird turns in the story. I'm like, oh no, this would be more realistic. If these were really thieves, they would steal everything from these characters, which changes the entire portion of the beginning story. Like they can't get help because they don't have the resources they need. I'm like, oh man, that sucks. But it is what it is. It's how these characters would act, and that changes things, unfortunately, sometimes. But for some other writers, they're like, I have a detailed outline. Like Slim Hangout and all the Russian people I've ever interviewed, like we don't get writer's block because we have everything plotted out and we stick to it. It's just writing dialogue, writing action scenes, writing these things, and I know everything's and I'm like, wow, that seems very structured, and I should try that sometime.
I've tried it. It didn't work for me. I have deleted up to 4 chapters in one go because the left-hand turn was so sharp that I couldn't keep up with it. So, yeah, but no, structure, outlines, no, not me.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm trying to get. I've been trying to do research and improve myself because that's the kind of person I am. Like, if I see a flaw within something that I'm doing, I want to be good at it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's tech stuff or gaming stuff or writing, podcasting, whatever it is, I want to try to be the best at it that I can. And that includes writing now. So I'm currently doing research and reading novel or books about like, how to create a good story or a story grid or structures. And some of it's very educational. A lot of it seems like filler in these novels, like they're 500 pages, but like the actual stuff that they're promising is like, oh, that's like 100 pages long basically, and I could have gotten there a lot sooner than but I'm like, okay, I get it, you got to sell a thing anyways. But I find it very interesting as well, and I've heard other people talk about like trying to get advice from people that don't have sales, and I'm like, that should probably be a thing you put in your novel or your instructional guide. I've never sold a story, but this is the way you should do a thing. But
if they put that in their guide, you wouldn't buy it.
I know. I'm just saying it's a very funny portion of being a writer. Apparently, is figuring out how to do your thing. And I know everybody's journey is different. I just find it interesting that some people feel the need to sell a book about a thing that they don't really know how to do or that they've never really done successfully, but they still know how to tell other people how to do a thing.
Well, people have always said, well, trust me, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So it's
interesting.
People
are probably wrong.
Yeah. But a lot of these books, I won't say they're all like that. A lot of them have been very productive in some ways. Like they've made me think about creating characters or describing stories differently or structuring them differently that I hadn't before. So it's not all fluff. Some of it is really useful. And it's like, oh, this is cool. I don't have to take a class at the community college anymore. I can just read this novel or whatever. Okay. For you though, what is the hardest and easiest thing about writing?
My hardest thing is, like I said, finding out where my characters are going to go. Being a Discovery writer, like I said, just flying with all of a sudden a massive change in where I thought the story was going. It's never stopped me. I have deleted up to 4 chapters before, but it's never stopped me from just progressing on. So I've never had the really hard like writer's block and stuff other people have had. The easiest things for me is just listening to my characters. I sit down and I read the last few pages of what I wrote, and then I pick back up and keep going. For me, it's always been about flow.
Are the actual voices in your head sometimes?
No, there aren't any voices in my head. How did you know about them?
I'm saying things. I'm trying to. Yeah. No, for me, it very much is that way. Like I'll have certain personality types in my brain speaking when I'm doing dialogue, and they're very. I mean, it sounds multiple personality-ish, but it's like they're real people. They're real characters, especially if they're based on people you actually know, and that you know them well enough that you kind of predict what they're going to say, what they're going to do. Just very much like you talked about with your gaming groups, and so they kind of do their own thing sometimes, and it's very interesting to discover as you're writing the things that they say, the things that they do, and I'm like, wow, I hadn't seen that coming like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I always, really good books for me are ones that I can get confused of whether or not it was a book or a movie I was watching. And for me, it's always, they're not voices in my head so much as I know the character, I know his background, I know what makes him tick. And when it comes to that situation of, hey, here's a new situation, deal with it, he should deal with it in point A or point B. And it's always, to me, it's a surprise when point B comes up when I was sure it was going to be point A.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, fun stuff being a discovery writer.
Oh, yeah.
I call it like seat your pants stuff because I read it in a book. I read in one of those author books, like, are you a pantser or a plotter? I'm like, tell me what those things are first, and I'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. You're writing series now. Writing one book is hard enough. Is writing a series different for you?
I've only written series so far. To me, for me, I think it would be harder to write a single book to get everything I want to convey for a character and their story into just a single book, because most single books are about 300-page Word document or less, by and large, which is 500 pages for Amazon Kindle format. Trying to condense, to me, a person down to that length would be difficult. The closest I came was Last Horizon Beta. I was already writing live when I put Beta out, but if Beta had just like completely imploded and I'd only sold like 100 copies ever on it, I might have hesitated to put out live, because Beta could have ended at the end of that, and I would have been happy with it.
Right, like it had enough of a finality, like, okay, this can kind of be the ending, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but for what I'm writing going forward, like Alpha World, of course, is a series because of the self-discovery for the main character and the fact that it's a game that reaches to level 100 before you get to the end content. That if you tried to condense that down into one book, I think it would be a mess.
Yeah, no,
fairly certain.
Many level jumps, which is kind of a complaint I had with some LitRPG stories, in that I think it's one of those structural things. Like, an author feels like, this is my one foray into LitRPG. I don't know if I'm going to like it or not, or if it's going to sell novels. So I'm going to tell my story and condense it. But when you do a jump from like level 1 to 29, and then 29 to 67, and then 67 to 100 without describing what happens in between, I'm like, you're losing a lot of the good stuff that I love so much. Like, I love the journey. I love that journey from 1 to 29. I want to know what happens. I want to know all the character art decisions, or the skill trees that they decided and why they changed, or maybe they had a respec or whatever. And it's just always baffling me how people can edit something. I mean, I think of it in game terms. I can edit a 100-level experience down into essentially like a 10-level journey, if you want to think of it that way. But it's and editing is just so challenging. Like, I don't know if that I've ever really cut anything out of my stories. Maybe I should have. Maybe they're too lengthy in some places, but I've never been able to, like, writing 500 words or 500 pages. Like, that seems easier than condensing it and streamlining it into a 200 or 300-page novel. So for anybody who can, I'm like, I give you props. You have much better planning or editing skills than I do.
The level jumps I'm fine with if it's in context. For like Alpha World, it's kind of a grindy game, which, you know, especially in book 2, you really see them grind at one point and going and hitting the same thing constantly. After a certain point, it should be they went out that day and basically did the same thing again, where they did that same thing for the next week, because you've already described what they're doing. As long as there's no new character interactions, there's no new bomb, somebody didn't die, hey, I gotta leave, my dad died, or whatever, I think you can condense that level jump, or that time. You can condense that time down.
It's more of a summary. Like, you've explained once what this quest series is, or what this area is, and all the fights there. And if you're going to go back in, you don't have to tell me again. I saw it. If you're going to go back 7 times, just tell me you went back 7 times. It's the same area. There's no new content. But when you're going to different areas, or you're just making such a huge jump where you must have gotten into different quests, that to me is always like, you're missing on opportunity to tell a good story, in my opinion.
Alpha World 3, what I'm writing now, they end up going to different zones that they've skipped. because they were going this very linear. We're going to hit this zone and then hit max for that zone basically,
Right.
and then go to this zone. And there are different branches they could take instead of just going to this specific zone. So in Alpha World 3, they're going back, which is lower level mobs for them at this point. But I want to at least give a description of these are the different mobs. These are what those different mobs did. This is what it made it harder or easier in each zone. Like, for instance, trying to convince a spider that it's your ally.
Mm-hmm.
Not really possible. It doesn't have the same brain chemistry.
Right.
But convincing an orc it's your ally is easy because it's humanoid.
Yeah, it's charm. It's a charm monster versus charm humanoid, I think, in like D&D terms.
Yeah. So, but for the succubus, when she gets an ability that lets her convince an enemy that it's an ally,
right.
It has to be something that can understand. Spiders don't understand.
Okay, so not undead, not things without brains.
Yes,
can't
undead,
that way, yeah.
undead, insects, so on and so forth. So that bit of control that the summoner could bring to the table is now cut out.
Yeah,
that zone for a summoner, not a good zone.
Nope.
So that is why one of the things is I wanted the world to feel more world.
Mm-hmm.
And also they're leaving quests back at lower levels. Because if you went to this zone, you would get those 3 or 4 quests. Go to this zone, you get those 3 or 4 quests, which are big XP bumps. So why wouldn't they?
Right.
And they come to that realization in 3, we should go back. So instead of 15 hours of describing them trudging through, they get to like the first set of mobs, and I break down that combat so you get an idea of how it works. And then it's, this is the new set of mobs. Okay, that's how that combat works. So you should at least understand how the characters are able to interact with the world,
mm-hmm.
but without it being, so for the next 15 hours, I'm going to describe that they went to this camp and killed the gnolls, and to this camp to kill the gnolls, and to this camp to kill. They did the first couple, and then it's, for the next 8 hours, they did what worked for them.
Right, right. And from a writing standpoint, the summarization makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a problem with when they skip that entirely. When they skip all those summaries, don't tell me what happened. It's just, oh, the next month I was at level 17 or I'm on level 39. I'm like,
even that doesn't bother me. The biggest thing that bothered me for that kind of thing, and it's mostly the Russian authors, was the MC for whatever reason is handed the God quest at the start, and he goes from level 1 to level 87
mm-hmm.
for that one quest, and I'm like,
yeah. I mean, they're just like experiential wise, like that doesn't make sense. Like as a mechanic, like isn't there like some level cap experience, or like you're level 1 so you can't get all the level 100 stuff? I mean, it's very detailed, like nerdy stuff, but it's like I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Let's see what else. Anything you're reading right now? Do you have any favorite LitRPG stories that you want to let readers know about?
Favorite LitRPG stories. So tell me, which of your 3 kids is your favorite?
The one that will potentially support me when I get old.
That's how I always review. That's how I always see that question. What's your favorite video game? What's your favorite book? To me, is always the, hey, you're a parent, pick your favorite child.
Yeah, no, I heard what you're saying.
There are series that I think are fabulous, but I still can't rank one above another. Right now, my favorite series at the moment has been Emrelia. Chatfield has done something that I've enjoyed. Every single book I've enjoyed the experience of. And the fact he puts them out every month makes me love him and hate him.
Yes.
I love him because, yay, a new Emrelia book. And as a writer, I hate him because I can't match that.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I feel the same way. Like, I'm very word count envious with Michael Chatfield. I'm like, man, you have a huge word count. I mean, it's like, I look down, I'm like, mine, like, oh.
Which is funny. Apocalypse Gates. It's just short of 300 pages in Word doc. I wrote that in a month. Now that is the second fastest I've written a story. Beta was faster. Beta took a hell of a lot longer to edit, but most stories don't flow quite that fast. They flow. I can easily knock out 3,000 words a day, up to 5. I think my max, which is completely unhealthy. I have put out 12,000 words writing in a day.
Wow.
That is an entire day of writing for me, though.
Yeah.
But I can see how he could write that fast. I don't know how he edits that fast. I mean, he has to use somebody who actually like is a professional,
Mhm.
because I can't see an amateur being able to edit an entire book in a month and do it as well as he has.
Yeah.
Out of his 6 books, I've got maybe a dozen errors.
Yeah.
So the other series that I have enjoyed Chaos Seeds. However, I really wish Aileron would go back and finish some of the story arcs he started in like book 2. They're sitting there and they annoy me. It's loose threads that I want to tug on or light on fire.
The quest he forgot in his log that you started at the beginning.
The blood oath, because the bugbears, the eaters out of the catacombs, so on and so forth. Really, those are like major things. You think that, the blood oath is gonna like seriously negatively impact him. But if nothing else, the eaters are supposed to be the scourge that can go out and wipe the entire world. And yet it sits there.
I'm curious to see if like the eaters are gonna turn into the zombies on the cover of the next book, because they eaters of the living. I don't know. Maybe they morph. I can't tell. But I hear what you're saying. Like, but I always forget that within the context of his stories, it's been like 2 months or something. Just like in I think you said at the beginning of your book of Alpha Book 1 or Alpha Book 2, it's only been a week for your main character. And that's all of Alpha Book 1 was. It's like one single week of him full immersion. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a lot of stuff that happens in there. And I forget that about the land series as well. Every time I read it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. This has only been like a couple months, and he's built a kingdom basically. So time. I just,
I like Blaise Corbin's Delver series. I had a problem with the first book, and that was just a character issue, and I understood that it was to help put the characters where he wanted them, which is, I understood why, but at the same time I was like, no, this character should never do that. But it's not my character. I can't make that call.
Yeah, I always feel that way. I might feel like, oh, this character wouldn't do. Like, wait, this isn't my character. I don't know what he would really do.
But Delvers is like far and away completely different than the other 2 series.
Yeah.
Which is apples, oranges. I can't decide a favorite, but I love each of those different series. Your book 1 was easily in the top 5 of beginning series books. I loved Adventures on Terra Book 1.
Yeah.
So much fun. So I can't pick. Don't ask me.
No, I hear you. I feel very much the same when I name one favorite story. I'm like, I got like 20 or 30 on that's really the reason I started to like a LitRPG Reclamation, because like I had so many good stories that I liked, but they weren't all liked in the same way. So I had to start organizing them for myself. I'm like, well, maybe somebody else might be interested in reading this list, because I know I'm probably not the only one out there who has an issue with like finding LitRPG stories on Amazon or on the Railroad or wherever, because there's no official category for LitRPG on Amazon. So you have to scroll through a list, and some of them are going to be LitRPG, some of them are going to be pretend LitRPG, and some are just using a tag to get sales, like some erotic romance fiction or whatever, which just seems oddly common recently.
Are you talking about Mr. Futch? Because I go to Mr. Futch if I want snuggle porn that's LitRPG.
No, I mean specifically like this is like full-blown romance novel with like werebears and like vampires, or just regular billionaire fiction romance stuff. It has nothing to do with the video game, but for some reason they tagged it LitRPG, and so it's on the search for LitRPG, and it's like really odd. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting choice, because I know that you only get so many tags you can throw on there, and you chose that one.
No, romance with werebears. I mean, they'd be cuddly, and they'd probably give the best hugs.
They do give very big hugs. They have a lot of pack mentality stuff in there. So there's like, it's like dominance foreplay stuff. But that's the Romance Werebear podcast, which is another thing I'm working on. So we'll come back to that. When you make it,
let me know. I want to come and watch the podcast for the Werebear romance.
See, there you go. It's people have asked for it. They're like, we want Ramon to read erotic fiction to us, and we will pay him money. And I'm like, if you pay the money, I will consider it.
If you drop your voice button one more octave, I think that would be the tone to be reading it in.
Oh no, and he walked into the room and he saw her across the hallway. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Very smoky voice. Well done,
yeah.
Sid.
Oh yeah. That's more the Kool-Aid man, like he pops to the door.
Pops to the door, romance in one hand, LitRPG in the other. I can see that.
There you go. Yeah, you know, so, but in all reality, Scotty stuff is that it does border the line of like, oh, is this erotic fiction? Because he actually has a series, I think, that is just full blown. I think it's the Freelance Saga, which is just full blown lit RPG sex stuff. And I'm like, that's cool. I mean, that's cool that it exists. It's not my thing, but I like the lit RPG stuff in there. I like the mechanics. And he has another series, I can't remember the name of it right now, that's a little more towards the game lit RPG stuff, but it still has sexual content. But he always flags that like in the synopsis, this contains full blown sex, and you know he gives a bunch of disclaimers. But I also noticed that people were when I was looking for the reviews for your Alpha World series, they kind of made the same point. So like, this has sex in, oh my god. I'm like, no, these are adults. It's a thing that happens. And if it's going to be a full immersion game with succubi, I'm like, you kind of saw that coming. Hopefully, it was foreshadowed a little bit.
Sex though. It has sensual shower scenes. If I had wanted to put sex in that book, I would have added another 100 pages and gone fully descriptive. There is no penetration. There's no lips wrapped around members. It is her washing down him and Karen at one other point in a shower. Mm-hmm. There is no actual sex being described.
There's a lot of fade to black, and there's a lot of, I'll say that there is fade to black, and there is just sexual words used, and that's enough for people. Like you say oral, you say in the context of like actual definitions of sexual members, or even just discussion about sexual activities like bondage or submissive dominant stuff, and that's enough for people to be like, okay, I'm done. Or for me, it's like, okay, we're grown-ups, we talk about these things. These are things that actual grown-ups are going to deal with in life. Why pretend otherwise? But at the same time, I'm like, I get that it's not for everybody, but I also get that grown-ups are the ones reading this.
I would hope. My books are normally tagged where I think you have to be 17 plus to actually buy them, because the fact that there's, when you put it up, it says like minimum age is one of the categories you can mark off.
So they must be using mom and dad's account, or
well, I wouldn't be surprised. Don't kids always?
Yeah.
But I completely lost it. If you're a 30-year-old man who's never had a relationship, and now all of a sudden you're in a relationship with a succubus, sex demon.
Yeah.
So if you didn't like book 1 because it had shower scenes, do me and you a favor. Don't read book 2.
Yes, no, because there are. I actually think there are less descriptive words that I do body parts than there are in book 1. Like I think you do more fade to black stuff in book 2. You still have a few descriptive phrases in there, and you definitely have more open discussion about sexuality and like having multiple partners, which is very in context for this game world. But there are fewer actual fade to black sex references. I'll say
there's more fade to black sections.
Is there?
And if you look at book 1 versus book 2, I guarantee you there's more fade to black in book 2.
I'll admit I didn't count.
There are more areas where things would probably upset people, like, waking up the best way a man ever could. That is glossed over quickly. But yeah, there is no shower scene in book 2.
There is not.
But that's because it didn't call for it. The shower scenes were specifically put into the book to help get the small hint across that, by the way, this person is more than she is.
Yes, it's a huge hint that she has extraordinary massage abilities, which hints for like she has extra skills that regular women don't.
So,
which is fine.
That's why that's the only reason I even went into the descriptive shower scene was because in each of them, the person who is being washed down ends up in a daze.
Right, mesmerized. Yeah.
So, there you go. The people who hated book 1.
Yeah, no, and like I said, as long as you're upfront about it, you guys, he's upfront about it. Be aware of it. Yeah, he has a little section at the bottom now. It says, "Go ahead with stuff here."
Yeah, well, if you read the section at the bottom of book 2, my sarcastic nature got the better of me. My warning tag for that is very pointed.
Okay, so lots of great stuff there. So be aware. Last Horizons doesn't have that stuff, but Alpha World does, and it's like I said, they're very much different stories in that Alpha World or Last Horizons, the relationships are established. relationships are basically ending permanently for some people. And Alpha World is a young man's story where he's starting over, and so he would have relationships. He would have a new girlfriend, new wife, new partners. Exploring things in a new world is very much a part of that phase of life.
But it's also in Last Horizon.
Is it? I mean, like super.
Doomit and Kiddish end up hooked up with Elvira.
It didn't sound as much in my mind then, I think, as it did in Alpha World then.
Because everything that happens there is immediately a fade to black.
Okay. And that happens a lot with like action stories as well. Like some people complain about all the horrible violence, I believe, over like Starship Troopers. And the author's like, none of that was written. That's all in your mind. I might hint at it, I might imply it, but all those graphic details that you're complaining about are really just in your brain.
Mm-hmm. I love the book Starship Troopers. The movie to me was not the book.
It is not faithful. It is fun in its own way. I think like if you think of it as, I mean, we're going to talk about it. If you think about it as just like this independent story that happens to have the same name, it's a perfectly fine, adventure.
If they had named the movie anything other than Starship Troopers, it would have been fine.
Yeah. Although there are some, I think there's like Starship Troopers 2 or 3 or whatever, that actually were a little more faithful to the tone and like some of the context of the original book that I happen to enjoy. And they're redoing Starship Troopers as well. Yeah,
I heard the rumors they were remaking it. I really hope they do what they should do, which is put the soldiers in power armor.
Yes, that would be, it seems like that would make sense considering that's the point of that story.
Yeah. Well, anyway, sorry, sidetracked.
Sidetrack. It happens. Like I said, any good conversation, you're going to get these things happening. Self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Now, this is kind of an interesting question for you because you're sort of doing both. You're self-publishing the ebook version of them on Amazon, but you're actually using, I want to say, more traditional publisher with your audiobook version of your stories. So now that you have both perspectives, sort of, what do you say some of the benefits of self-publishing versus traditional publishing are for an author?
More creative control for self-publishing. Now I have not talked to many actual traditional published authors. I have talked to 1 or 2. They have to submit their stuff, and then they get it back from their editor with, you need to clarify this, or this needs to be completely reworked, and so on and so forth. Where with the self-publisher, I can write the story I want, and you can go jump off a bridge for all I care, which is really nice. I love being able to tell the story I want to tell and not have people tell me this 20-page section doesn't need to be in here, reword it. However, on the same time, if I was traditionally published, I would have probably a decent sized check up front that says, hey, go ahead and write the book we want you to write. And I'm a big fan of money. I don't know many people that aren't. So being traditionally published would be kind of cool. However, I'm not sure I really want to give up my creative freedom that I get with self-publishing. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, that absolutely does. And I think those are kind of the big points of self-publishing versus traditional, is that, one, you have total control. No one can tell you no. Amazon and other ebook platforms like Smashwords or Apple, I guess, give you that opportunity, that platform where we can just put your stuff up and the audience decides whether you're successful or not. It resonates or it doesn't. Those are the choices, basically. And there is no gatekeeper. At the same time, you're the one in charge. You got to figure out editing, and you got to figure out cover art, and you got to figure out audiobook stuff, or got to buy a narrator, or you got to purchase editors, or whatever the case is. It's all you. You're your marketer, you're your producer, you're everything. So there's a lot more responsibility there. But the freedom of control is also there. You can find your audience. Like, I don't think at this point, maybe things are changing, no traditional publisher is going to see this genre and saying, oh, I'm going to invest tens of thousands of dollars in editing and marketing for the returns you get on this in a book you put out in this place in LitRPG, which is fine. I don't dispute that. I don't even, math is math. But for someone who's self-publishing, I'm investing my time. And so putting it up and making $1,000 or whatever, or making a couple $100 sales is perfectly legitimate, and it's worth it as a side gig or just as a fun project, whatever the case is. And I think that freedom allows a lot of different stories to be told that would never have seen the light of day had they gone through a traditional publisher. On the audiobook side of it, I know you're doing the traditional publishing side. How has that experience been for you?
Well, I am working with 2 separate companies from my 2 separate series, and they are different. Tantor is doing Last Horizon, and Podium is doing Alpha World. I don't have completely firm dates yet, except for, of course, beta, which they sprung on me as a surprise. So it's the way that 2 different companies communicate is vastly different. What they offer back is also different. So I'm not supposed to talk actual contract stuff. So, but it's nice knowing that it's going to be out there, because I've had people ask me for the audiobooks.
Right.
And I didn't want to invest the upfront money for having to do them because I was never sure about return.
Right.
So it's nice basically being able to go, okay, guys, you should know what you're doing. You're 2 established companies. I'm going to trust you. Please don't butcher this. So between the 2 of them, though, like I said, Tantor is putting out beta here in just a day or 2. And Alpha World 1, I think, is tentatively like late July. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. I'm happy, and I've told them both that there is another entire series being edited. I'm hoping I can get them into a bidding war, because I love bidding wars, because I win in a bidding war.
Yes.
I doubt it'll happen, but it's a dream, and life is all about dreams.
Yes.
My biggest thing with self-publishing books, though, has been cover art. Finding a good cover artist, for me, has been a nightmare.
Yeah, I hear it. It's hard because it's not something that you normally have leads on. Like, you're a writer, you write your stuff, you put it on Word or whatever, and that it edits. That's fine. You have that experience. But like real creative stuff, like cover arts and like finding somebody you like and negotiating, it all seems very intimidating up front. Like, it seems very scary. Like, just email somebody and say, I like your stuff. How much would it cost for cover art? Even though it's physically a simple thing, it's just it feels so intimidating for some reason, for me anyways. Like doing the search, like saying, I like that thing, but should I email them? Is it rude? Or how much do I offer up front? And not having any points of comparison, because I get a lot of people, I don't know why this is, it seems counterintuitive, but they hide financial facts from each other. Whether it's in a contract or not, I'm like, it always makes more sense as an indie community. Why wouldn't you say, oh, I paid this much for this art, or I didn't pay this range for audiobook stuff, or for like narrator things, and that way people have a basis for like a comparison, like, oh, I'm getting royally screwed here, or oh, this is a really good deal, and why is that a good deal? That kind of stuff. But I understand how intimidating it can be. For me, I lucked out. I'm like talk to Blaze Corfin. I'm always friends with like a lot of the LitRPG community. I'm like, I like your cover art. Who does your stuff? And he was like, oh, here's her name. Here's her email. Go give her a call, or give her send her email about what you want to do. And that was it. And it was like, she's like, oh, this is what I charge. I'm like, that doesn't sound bad. I have no point of comparison, but it sounds good to me. And it really was. Later on, I found out like, oh, she's probably undervaluing her work a bit for what she's putting out. So I'm like, oh, it worked out well. But for me, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what to do. But I know now that there are tons of resources. If you go to like DeviantArt, or if you just ask an author like, oh, I love who did your cover art, who does it, can I get their contact information? I'm like, talk to them about whatever. And most people in the community are like, oh yeah, sure. Here's their stuff. I love their work. I want them to be successful too.
I think I found the opposite from a couple of authors. Hey, I love your cover art. Can you tell me who does it? No. Thanks. I appreciate that. I recently just got a reply back from I don't want to butcher the name. It's Hatchling Wavernet. I can't think of the author's name.
Oh yeah,
I love
that
cover art.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Love that cover art. And they actually replied back to me with the name of their artist. So going forward, I am probably going to contact them to see about getting covers for books. However, I already have the cover art for Apocalypse Gate lined up, and I already have the cover art for Alpha World 3 lined up. So it's going to be a little while before I can go to them with something that actually get done. But at least now I have a solid lead.
Yeah, and that's part of the process of being a self-published author, is that you have to figure that stuff out on your own. And sometimes there's no convenient online guide to do so, unfortunately. Especially if you're thinking about you got to have a contract. It can't just be like, oh, I'll pay you this thing, right? And it's like, no, you have to set up actual legal documents. And it's not a hard contract. It's a simple search on the internet, artist contract, and they give you a form basically saying, setting up your terms with your person you're negotiating with, so that everybody feels comfortable. And that's kind of it. It's just like finding the person is probably the hardest thing in my opinion, like, because everybody has different ideas on what they like for art and what they're going to do. And for me, it's always like I have to write some of the story and get an idea like what I want the visual to be for it before I can start, sending emails to my artist saying, this is kind of what I want to do. And then she'll send me a draft back in like just outline saying, oh, this is what I'm thinking of. What do you think? Do you want something different? And sometimes it's like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Or like, oh, can you change his position a little bit? Or can you make sure this character's in the background? Or it's supposed to be, you have it set in a forest. It's supposed to be a castle. And that's all usually simple with most artists. I mean, for the one I worked with, I get to, and then just like a color draft, a final draft. And, at each stage, it's like, oh, we have a certain amount that I'm sending her for the overall payment. And the final part is at the end when it's done. And that's kind of it. It's really not as complicated as I thought it was. But going into it, I remember feeling very intimidated about, I have no idea what I'm doing. But that, I mean, personally, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with research and doing tons of it and figuring it out. But I know not everybody is. And so for those people who either don't want to go through the hassle or who just feel so intimidated it stops them from being creative, traditional might be better.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite.
Yeah,
I put out Alpha World 1 with a cover that was okay. I went through like 6 different artists trying to get a cover that I liked, and that's the one I settled for. And that is the correct word for that.
Yes, and I noticed very much it was kind of similar with the Last Horizon series. Like you changed cover art, I should say, between what you had originally, which was a picture of a forest, I think, right, for beta. And then book 2 came out, and I think you had something similar, but then it very shifted into like a really nice pose of like, I want to say it's you on the cover. Now that I see you live, it's like you with like a longer beard.
That is Doomeden, red hair with gray streak through it. That is the portrait of him.
Okay.
Just this is the haircut and style I've had since I was like 16. The beard is ever since I got out of food industry 4 years ago. But the whole like not having hair thing, yeah, I was the guy that my friends used to tag because I looked to be 21 to go off to the store to get things we weren't supposed to have. So, yeah. So for old cantankerous person, actually, the idea behind the hair and beard for Doomeden was from my mother's father.
Oh.
Who, same hairstyle because mother's is where the hairline comes from.
Yeah, it's supposed to be,
apparently. Which I never let her forget.
Thanks, Mom.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so there you go. So stuff about self-publishing, stuff about traditional publishing, folks. You got your fix. If you have any questions, you should have asked them sooner because we're coming on those real quickly. To KU or not to KU?
I KU. And I can honestly say that Kindle Unlimited gives me back 2/3 of overall money that I make.
Yeah, me too. I mean, having been book 1, book 2, and having gotten a few royalty checks by now, I'm like, oh, my KU stuff is as lucrative for me as the direct purchases. And I think that's mostly because of the length of the novel. Like once somebody gets into like a 500-page novel and they go through the entire KU, pages, I'm like, that's about as much as I would make on an actual purchase of it. So I'm like, but I know other authors are like, because of the limiting factor of it, they can't sell it other places. They can't sell it on Apple. They can't sell it on wherever the other platforms they want to use. And they can't get qualified for like New York or whatever Times best-selling author lists either.
No.
Why that's important for a self-published indie author on Amazon, I don't know. But some people, it's really important to them, so they choose not to do that. And it's always very curious to see what people do and why. So, thanks.
KU for me, it comes down to like when I wrote beta. I want people to read it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And even if that meant I wasn't making as much, that would be fine for me. Since it's not my full-time job.
Right.
For people like Michael Earl Scott.
Yeah, Michael Scott Earl.
Oh, Scott Earl, thank you. For him being a full-time writer and that being his thing, I can maybe understand why he doesn't want all of his books up on KU.
Mm-hmm.
Because he needs to make hard money back all the time.
Yeah. He has kids and stuff. Yeah.
But for me, since this is the thing I'm just doing because I love to write and whatever, I don't mind if I make a little bit less if it reaches a much broader audience.
Right. And to me, the KU setup is very much, it gets a very broad audience. Like a lot of people were willing to take a chance on KU. I should say the funding Kindle Unlimited program for people who aren't aware of what KU stands for. But it kind of takes that same model as like putting your first book out for free in like a long running series. Mm-hmm. Like it gets a lot of people in there, and not everybody's going to follow through into book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. But at least it gets them interested and willing to take a chance on your world. And then, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, maybe you don't have on there. Maybe you do. But I think it works very well for at least getting a broader audience of people to look at your stuff. And some people like it, some people don't, but that's anything.
Well, I can say KU as a consumer,
yes,
has saved me a ton of money.
Yeah. 10, 20 books a month, and you're like, oh, $9, that's perfect.
I did buy at the start of finding LitRPG. I bought every book.
And sometimes that's because you didn't have a choice.
Yeah. So, well, I didn't really understand the whole idea behind Kindle Unlimited at the time. Since I have gone to Kindle Unlimited, I have saved myself a heck of a lot of money. Now, to all of you who are aware, if you read it on Kindle Unlimited and you love it, do the author a favor, buy it.
That is a choice. I would say always at least review it, even if you didn't, finish it, or say why. But yeah, buying it's always nice as well if you can afford it. If you can't, personally, I'm like, I get it. It's cool with me. Yeah. I'd give it to you for free if I didn't have to pay bills.
Bills, yeah, those things.
Yeah, they demand to be paid every month.
Yeah, little goblins that jump out of the mailbox at you.
Very good. Okay, on to a little bit of marketing stuff. I know you don't do a ton of it. What do you do to get reviews? Because as far as I'm able to glean from like other people's conversations, writers, reviews are really important for like the algorithms and Amazon and whatnot. So how do you get reviews? Do you do any campaigning for reviews? And how do you deal with negative reviews?
Yeah, no, I don't. I am horrible at marketing. I am even worse at self-marketing because I can't accurately assess what I think the thing is worth that I put time and effort into. So I have never gone out and been like, please leave me reviews, unless they said they love the book. Then I'm like, please just, drop me a review on it. I have had somebody tell me that they were going to leave me a critical review, and then they weren't because it was a critical review, even though they thought the book overall was good. And I told them, go put it up anyway. If it's a critical review that has constructive criticism behind it, I want to read it. Constructive criticism will only ever help me get better. Now, I'm also really bad at dealing with negative reviews, because negative reviews by and large come in the form of, this book was boring, this book contained sex, OMG, or I think you should die in a fire because you're a horrible author. I don't respond well to these things. However, I always hope that there's a positive review coming after that says, oh my God, this book made me laugh, this book made me cry, this was perfect, it was what I was looking for. And as long as I can get the positive reviews, they will always help me get over the, you're a horrible author, I hope you die in a bus fire.
Yes, and that's very much the case. Like it's always surprising the range of people who will read your stuff, which is also, I guess, the negative side of KU, and that people who have no idea what your stuff is, like, oh, that's a pretty cover, I'll go check it out, and then they're like, wait, this is a thing that I'm not familiar with, I'm like, yes, that was in the synopsis. You should have read it before you press the button. I mean, continue reading, please. But it's like, I hate your stuff. It has no plot. There's no, development, or the pacing's horrible, or like, what's this stupid game stuff? I'm like, that's kind of a genre, man. But at the same time, even if they're like, I love critical reviews. And I've taken them to heart with the book too. I'm like, oh, maybe not so much pop culture this time, or not so many direct references from other things, but the ones that are just like, this is evil, go burn. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what it is. But the ones that always touch me are the ones like, this was perfect. It helped me out of depression. I love this series. It makes me so happy whenever I see it. When's book 3 coming out? Or when it was like, my husband's on deployment. I bought this for him. Book 2, he's been wanting for such a long time. He's giving me so many great bounty points because I bought it from him in advance. Like the day it came out, thank you so much. He loves your series and stuff. And I'm like, that kind of stuff is like what makes the other ones tolerable. The ones that are just not critical, the ones that are just like bad feedback, or just like they're just mean, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
The ones, and it's always, I'm not really sure how to balance this on, because it's very much an emotional roller coaster. Like, I'll read one review, it's like, yay, like, oh yeah, this is amazing, you love the stuff, I love you too. And the next one's like, you suck. And I'm like, your book is boring. I'm like, oh, I'm not sure what to do with that.
Yeah. It's for, I'm not a people person.
Yeah.
I'm really not. I would rather stay in my cave in the safety of it and not have to deal with people ever, which is, you know, another great reason to become a full-time writer for me, which is something I hope to do one day. But negative reviews, I think I've left a couple of negative reviews for things.
Yeah. Back
before, like, I started writing and stuff. And since I've become a writer, I've shifted the perspective of, if it can't be constructive, even if you hated it, then just leave it alone. The people who put out positive reviews will normally say the things that they loved about it enough so you get the idea of what the book is. There's no reason to say, this book was boring, please die in a fire.
Yeah, no, I hear it. And as somebody who reviews LitRPG weekly, I try to take a balanced, critical point of view. And that hasn't really changed becoming an author, oddly enough. It's more along like, I have better words and I have better experiences to draw upon to critically analyze work. Because I sometimes, because a new entry in a series comes out, I'll have to go back and like read my first review of like the first book. And so I read that review, I'm like, I'll say like 3 sentences. I'm like, this was a good book, I enjoyed it, you should buy it, basically. And now it's like 5 or 6 paragraphs of like, this is LitRPG because of this, or this is not LitRPG because of this, and these are the mechanics I liked, and these are the ones I didn't, or the story got boring here, or this feels like it's a cash grab, or whatever. And it's much more detailed and much more critical, in my opinion. And I think those reviews are much more helpful, because I've had a number of authors email me at the LitRPG Podcast email and say, thank you for your critical review. I wasn't really sure what LitRPG was, or I will be sure to make these corrections in my next book. I've got this feedback repeatedly, but thank you for taking the time to actually tell me something about this. It's helpful for me as an author or whatever. And very rarely has it been, you're a horrible person, why did you say this about my thing? It's only happened like once. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, I don't respond to those, but it's like the other authors are like, I want you to do well. And I'll respond, I'm saying, I don't give the reviews because I hate your stuff, even if I give you bad reviews. Like, I want you to do what, every time I read your story, if I read something new, it's like, I want to love this every single time. I love LitRPG. And when it's disappointing, it's kind of super disappointing occasionally, because it's like, I feel tricked if it wasn't really LitRPG in that case, but I still want it to be good. And I'm just pointing out the things that, as a consumer of a lot of these stories, I'm like, these things need to be there, or maybe you should possibly change this particular point, whatever it is. And I think those are good reviews, because even if you don't give me a good score, 2 out of 5 or whatever it is, or 1 out of 5, at least you're telling them why, and you're not just being mean for cruelty's sake. It is trying to point out things that maybe can improve, or maybe just from point of view didn't work for you.
Yeah, which is all I want out of people who leave me 1, 2, and even some of the 3-star reviews. Though I still consider a 3-star review not bad, unless the words behind it are horrible.
Yes.
Just tell me what it was that was so horrible that you couldn't. But tell me, don't just say boring or OMG sex. Tell me. The shower scenes were too much. Everything up to that was perfect, but that one scene really turned me off in the book.
Yes.
Okay, at least that I can look at.
Yeah, and you can do something with that. You can't do something with the sex. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. Okay, on to questions from the audience. Before we start that, was there anything you wanted to include that we haven't talked about?
When you're reviewing my second book.
Oh, I have a review ready for you, man. It's ready to go tomorrow, or when people see this, it'll be there. I'll purchase the book, and I will hopefully be the first person to review it. If not, I'm okay with that. But the review is ready to go, and I won't spoil it for you because I know you read them. So
I watch all of your reviews because I like to know what your opinion was. So you get to a lot of books before I do, by and large, because it's what you do as compared to my little bit of reading time. And I like to see what you thought of them. There have been a few I've gotten to first, and I've had my own opinion, and then you review it, and I go, huh, I didn't think about it that way. That is good. I should go back and give that another try. So I was just wondering if it was going to be up on, the next week's podcast. So
yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, whenever somebody gives me a book in advance, in my mind, that's part of the contract. I need to have a review ready for them when their book comes out. And like 90% of the time I'm able to do it. Sometimes life just happens, or they get it to me a day before it comes out. I'm like, you can't really expect me to have something ready for you by tomorrow, right? I have 7 books to read this week. But when it's like something you did, like you gave me weeks and weeks in advance, I'm like, yeah, I have plenty of time to schedule it in, even if it's a busy week, whatever, because you were nice enough to give me a lead, and that really does help me plan out my reading schedule, because that's what it is these days. It's like, I know as far in advance as possible. Your book's coming out 10 weeks from now. You want to give me 6 weeks in advance? Great. I can plan things out, like when can I get to this, or when can I will make time for your novel because you took the time to give me advance, and I'll have something ready on time. That's kind of the social contract that I have in my own mind. Like, nobody asked me to do it that way, but like, that's what I do. So yeah, I have something ready for you.
So you're saying I'm not a special snowflake if I gave you the book only 1 day in advance? You couldn't do it?
If there was an emergency, I guess, and you're like, here's $1 million. I don't know. I even then I'd be like, I would be less likely to get paid for a review. But I would try if it was like if that was a super big favor, because I'm that kind of person who likes to.
I don't know. If I had $1 million, Ramon, I'm not sure I'd be giving it to you for a review. Much as I like your reviews, if I had $1 million, I'd be perfectly content to hold on to it and roll around in it.
See, I'd assume you were the billionaire who's like, oh, here's $1 million. Can you bump me up in line? I'm like, I don't know that I would do it then. I would be like, I see, because some people, I had a guy once who tried to pay me for a review, or actually tried to pay me to write reviews for him. And I'm like, you don't realize I do this to pay for the podcast, right? I'm like, it's kind of the thing. And he's like, no, I'm trying to do my own website. Can you just write reviews for me until I get caught up on my LitRPG stuff? And I'm like, it's a very weird mix of like, do you want to get paid for your stuff because people make a living doing this, or do you like, where's that boundary for you? You know what I mean? Like, are you paid to play, or are you just paid to support them?
Where is the line in the sand for you?
And for me, it's like, oh, you want to support me? Great. I do this for free. I give this podcast away for free. And as long as if you want to support us, great. There's a place to do it at Patreon, but you don't get paid reviews. And it's like, I'm just doing this anyways. I give this out for free. I'm not making, I lose money every year I do this. I don't think I've made $1 doing this, either this podcast or the Geek Blast podcast. For me, it's like, we almost broke even last year. Like, I think I owed, I was like I think it's the red. Is debt. I was in the red $30. So I was really close. And maybe this year, we'll have a little extra money, like we'll be in profit to, like, I don't know, buy something. But I'm like maybe a new camera. I don't know. But it's like, it's not a money making scheme. It's a thing I do because I love it. So I'm like, so yeah.
Do what you love. The words my grandmother gave to me. Follow your dreams.
Follow your dreams.
Which I did when I started writing beta.
See, there you go. Congratulations. You've made her very happy wherever she is.
Heaven, supposedly.
Yes.
Depending on which religion you listen to. So.
Yep, there you go. My grandmother's is not that place. She's screaming at me from somewhere else. But that's a different story.
Probably has the pitchfork to go with.
Yes. She would be seeing the succubus, I think, and the little demon, I think, from your stories.
Bob. I love Bob.
I'm just kidding. I love my grandma. She was really nice. I'm just teasing. Sorry, Grandpa, don't haunt me. Okay, on to questions from the audience. I had a few questions for you that I'll knock out real quick.
Okay.
You actually hit one of them. Oh, you actually institute like a 2-week waiting period in your game for like an update on that. Was that intentional for like a plotting reason? Because as an author, I'm always looking for like, this is weird. I don't know why he did it. Maybe there's like a real author reason, or was it just because that's what you thought would need to happen?
So for the players, it was 1 day off.
Yeah.
For the people inside of Alpha World, it was 2 weeks. And the reason for that is Alpha World is its own living thing at this point. It is being governed by the AIs to a degree. So if you were going to do massive changes to the social structure of that world, it would take at least some time for it to happen. So that's why for the players it was 1 week, but for the world it was 2 weeks, was specifically for those changes to take place, for the gods to have their small little spat, which during one of the patch notes you see that a lot of the minor gods have basically been taken out. The Portal Guild being completely redone with the way it was to cut down waiting times. Because for a game perspective, it needs to happen. But from a living world perspective, what does that entail?
Okay, so you're taking the perspective that this is a living, breathing world with its own set time scale, and in game terms of that, as if it's a portal world almost, these things would take time to happen on that world. It's just that from the player perspective, it's a day or 2 weeks in real game time. Is that what you're saying almost?
Yeah, the Alpha World is a game.
Yeah.
But for the AIs who control it, it's their world.
Right. It's like,
so
it'll be like a different planet or something.
Yeah. So it's really a mix between game and Portal fantasy almost, except it's not a Portal fantasy. It is very much a game. Right. It just should act like a living, breathing place.
Right. Okay, perfect. That definitely answers my question on that. I was wondering, like, is this an Arthur trick? I don't know. And you're like, sort of.
It's kind of a trick, but it has reasons behind it. And those reasons might come out more in later work.
Really? Oh, okay. Curious. Because I know you mentioned the gods. I'm like, I don't think I've actually seen like any gods to my knowledge. I mean, you can think of the Dark Lord. But I'm like, they're actual gods. Because a lot of times in these RPG games, in these RPGs, like the gods exist, but you don't really see them. They're really AIs or whatever. And their conflicts are never there. The players see consequences of them potentially, but not like the actual fights. So maybe that's something that's coming up later, I guess. Is that what you're hinting at? There's the face.
Stormguard is governed by justice, the god of justice, because, creators sometimes aren't creative.
Yeah.
I went very basic because the game, like I said, was supposed to be, it's a test bed for what the game company wants to do in the future. But in book 3, you might or might not have an interaction with something that considers itself a deity.
Okay, there you go. That's a very good hint. Okay, that's all I can ask for. Okay. My other question was there's an NPC called Grimgar. Is that a nod to the anime or light novel?
I needed a name, and I actually loved the anime and light novel of Grimgar.
Okay. Yeah, I do that a lot too.
And it sounds very dwarven to me, Grimgar. So it worked. It just fit in.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I thought that was. I'm like, that sounds awfully familiar. I'm like,
you've read book 2. There is an NPC who gets mentioned in book 2 that you should be able to pick up on very easily, even though the name is changed some. So yes, I do nods, because nods, I think, especially in like MMORPGs, happen.
Yeah.
So
they reference other works. I was just reading Vasily Mahenko's Dark Paladin series, and he actually mentions the Shaman Mahan as a dragon in there. I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. That's a nice little, nod to his own work. But I probably do too much, according to my reviews. I do too many nods to characters that I love, but it's always out of love for my stories. So like, I really do love those characters, and I try not to be too intellectual property infringing.
The nod should come at time and place for me, though. So because it is a actual game that's set for for all intents and purposes, modern day Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Those nods are there because if I'm a game designer and I need a character of X archetype, and oh, hey, by the way, 10 years ago, there was a movie with that archetype, I can just change the name a little bit and drop him in, and everybody will get the inside Easter egg. Yours, I like the references, but since it very much is a Portal world,
yes,
some of them I'm like, that's I like it, but at the same time, ow.
Sometimes doesn't make quite the sense that you would hope it would. And sometimes for me, it's just what I'm watching on TV. Like literally, there were several occasions in that story where it's like, I'm taking a break, I'm watching a Kung Fu marathon, or I'm watching, Star Trek, or, whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, I love these things. I need a transportation company. And so I'm like, I'm going to use these people, and I'm going to try to twist them, change their names at least. And that's how that fits into my. And sometimes people get annoyed by it. I'm like, I have to enjoy my writing, and my wife at least laughs at most of the references I make, with mostly Harry Potter stuff. But it's like, if I can't enjoy my own writing, if I can't talk about the things that I love and I'm nerdy about, what's the point?
Write
what I mean?
You want to write.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I've ever cared about. Write what you want to write. Now, for you being a full-time author, you do need to kind of balance the fact that you still can't drive everybody away.
Yeah.
But the people who enjoy it will stay there.
They really enjoy it. They're like,
they're
like, I love this part of your stories. Please continue. And other people like, it's sort of distracting. So I had to find a balanced middle ground for book 3, and I get that.
I don't know. I loved the dungeon scene in book 2.
I loved it too, and I like that character, and it's a reveal at the end. But at the same point, I realized, okay, maybe it wasn't original enough. Maybe it was a little too much for some people. I'm like, it is what it is. I really did plan to have a similar character at the end because it was undead themed in that novel, and so that character being there made sense. I'm like, wait, I know another character who's very similar to that. Why can't I just alter a little and justify porting in? And maybe people like it, maybe they won't, and it is what it is. Like, but it makes sense within context for that one character. For others, I get, like, I just kind of pulled them out because I wanted to have fun.
Yeah, the Futurama reference was the one that made me facepalm.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, why not? And some people got really annoyed that the main character didn't recognize them. I'm like, he can't really recognize them because that's the joke. And my wife gets it. She's like, oh, okay. But that's all it really is. Like, he's not stupid. He probably should recognize them. But at the same point, that's kind of the double joke on it. It's like, hey, Okay, so there you go. Those, back to you though. Next question from Lars Goran Forsberg. He asked, what is your favorite fishing lure?
Fishing is the thing where you do things outside, right?
I think that's what I'm told. I've seen it on TV. I've never done it myself.
I've fished inside before.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not go with that story. No, I don't fish outside because it involves the burning ball of death that hangs in the sky and burns people of Irish complexions. Yeah, I don't like it.
Well, see, there you go. So the fishing lure would be the default setting. My only reference are like fishing games.
Bassmaster 3.
Yeah, so that's it. That's all I have for you folks. So there you go. He did answer the question though. Let's see. Oh, you've asked yourself a question. Daniel Schinhofen says, Schinhofen. See, I keep adding the O in there. Daniel Schinhofen says, oh, Schinhofen is the alternate you from another dimension, but because you're bearded, he has to be clean shaven. So he's asking you, ask him how he keeps his hair so fabulous.
Oh, that's easy. I don't have any hair on the top of my head. My beard is a little more difficult. It's finicky. It likes to eat things. It requires a lot of maintenance and sometimes pulling of hairs to stop it from trying to eat things like cats. When the cat decides it wants to walk across my chest, my beard tries to grab it, and it's a wrestling match. It's not pretty.
It reminds me of an Iron Druid storyline where there was a religious sect who actually had beards that moved, and they were actually able to grab things.
Yes.
Like, yeah. Well, there you go. Now folks, he's told you a little bit more about himself as well. He's secretly a Kabbalist. I think they were
giving out secrets.
Okay. That's why it's supposed to be a secret society. The first rule of secret society, don't talk about the secret society.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Dakota Crown asks, where do you get your glorious hats?
My glorious hat, which is on like everything because I use the one default picture for like every media, was actually a gift from my father because the one thing I do outside on occasion is golf. And since I live in the desert, and like yesterday it was like 112 or 115, that hat is designed to basically be soaked in water, and then it acts as kind of a swamp cooler for your head, which makes it very useful when you're outside in 115-degree weather because you're crazy enough to play a game that's flog spelled backwards.
Yes, and you don't actually have the natural head protection as well, so you need the thing to protect your scalp from burning off.
Yes, because I have Irish blood in me, and anything that even remotely looks like the sun burns me. Yes. I'm actually kind of afraid of pictures of the sun because I figure somehow it might still work.
Yeah, by what's it called? Not proxy, by metaphoric means.
Yeah, see?
Yeah. I get you. My wife is Irish descent as well. Red hair, super fair skin, freckles, and she steps out in the sun, and you see little wavy burning lines coming off her skin. Yeah. There you go. Okay. Next question we have Ian Michael asks, how'd you end up doing a series about older gamers?
Last Horizon came from the idea of if in 30 years from now virtual reality full immersion was a thing, would people our age, because I think you're in your 30s, Ramon, I could be wrong, would we do it? And if we did, what would that entail? And it was also based on the premise of I'm in 30 years from now, I hope my friends are still friends with me. And if we were, wouldn't we all go together? So that was basically the premise of it's something I would love to have happen, but in a time frame where I could still do it. Please give me full immersion virtual reality by the time I'm 60 or 70 so I can experience it and be like, yes, this is what I was writing about all those years. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's kind of where virtual reality is now. There's a lot of promise, and have you actually played, have you used virtual reality before?
No, my problem with them is most of them are goggles, and I wear glasses, and I find most goggles and glasses don't get along. And without my glasses, I can see maybe 3 inches.
Okay, well, that might be actually enough because the lens and the image is actually literally 3 inches from your face. So you might test it out, see what works for you. But I've used virtual reality, Gear VR, Oculus Rift, the Vive, and it's super cool in that it's something different. It feels like it's almost there visually. It's like your brain is totally tricked. Like you step off the edge of a ledge and your body reacts as if you're stepping on it. Even though your brain, like, this is all pixelated stuff, your brain literally doesn't understand the difference, and you feel vertigo. You feel that sense of, oh my god, I'm going to fall off. And you've seen all those videos online by people falling left and right. And I used to be a substitute teacher, and I would take the Gear VR with me, which is the just the phone and machine packed in. It's portable version. And it's less resolution, of course. And I would give it to the kids I was teaching, and they would all flip out. Like they would really fall off their chairs when they were testing it out. Especially like there's one with like a simulation of you're in the ocean and creatures are floating around you, and one of them at one point is a shark, and they always flipped out and they started screaming and like trying to touch it. And they're kids, so they really don't know this, but there is that sense of immersion there. And I can only imagine in like 20, 30 years how much more advanced it's going to be when you actually can do text touching stuff. That's where they're kind of figure out now, like, how do you combine actual input that's not a keyboard, a mouse, or a controller? Because that does break the immersion when you don't see your arms, when it's just a head floating basically in space, and you can't see your hands. It kind of breaks it a little bit, but that's the next step. Input to me is the big thing. And once you get input, whether it's walking or touching, and that's sort of midway between with the wands, that's going to be great. And just full on like Matrix stuff, I can't wait for it. I'm ready for the implant I'm like, I'll pay for the surgery, just plug me in, man. I'm ready for it. But I'm with you on that particular aspect.
I will let you get the implant first and then wait a year make sure it doesn't short out.
Like I might come back a year later. I'm like, it's fine, man. I swear.
It's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Michael Dash asked, when you sleep, do you sleep on your back like a normal person, or do writers sleep on their heads?
I've never tried sleeping on my head. I have a feeling that would be uncomfortable, especially with my body weight. I have been told that I try to eat my pillow. So I sleep face down, apparently, most of the time.
Do you? Okay. That's
I
curious.
don't go to sleep that way, but apparently that's the way I wake up. So I'm assuming at some point I think my pillow is tasty. So
are you trying to smother yourself in your sleep? Is that what it is? You're like,
could be. Apparently I am an abomination and I know it, and I'm trying to save the world. It could very well be it.
Psychologically, like, no, this is better for everybody. Just slowly turn and yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, me, I'm a side sleeper. I can't sleep otherwise. I don't know why it is, and it's really hard to find a correct pillow that accommodates this space in your head to side sleep. I've yet to find one. If you know of one, folks, just send me a link at feedback@geekpodcast.com. Okay. Next question is from Jay Taylor. As an author, why do you not advertise your work more heavily? You seem to shy away from most forms of promotion.
I don't like people, and marketing and promotions means talking to people, something I am not good at. I have a hard time at approaching people for the first time. If I've talked to you a couple of times, I have no problem coming up, and then at that point normally people run screaming and please not him again. But first time trying to, hey, you really want to read this? It's great. No, I promise. No, it's not because I wrote it. It's just great. You should trust me. It's just not in my nature.
No, I hear it. And I'm honestly the same way about my own things. Like I love talking about other people's works. Like I can be passionate. I can be a advocate for authors that maybe don't get a lot of press or don't do their promotional work. But for my own stuff, I'm always like, hey, just this announcement. This is my thing, and that's it. See you later. And then I go on to other people's things and talk for hours and hours about their stuff. But it's very weird because in one respect, as an author, you're being very out there. You're putting your heart and soul in a way for a world to see. But in the other aspect, it's very insular because you're doing it by yourself. You're literally just in a room, taking stuff in your brain, put it in paper or on a computer, and it's a very isolating experience. Until you get to the end product, and then people expect you to be like, oh, gushing about this great baby, literary baby that you made. And they're very different quality for some people. And I can respect people like Alan who can do both. I can't. I mean, besides this is not me talking about myself. This is me talking about people I love and things that I love and their work, which I've taken to heart. And that's easy for me because it's not me, it's them. It's not in here. It's everywhere else. And even this experience is me talking to a computer screen with a camera. I'm not talking to a live audience. Not that I couldn't. It's just, this is easier. So I hear what you're saying, man.
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay. Jay Taylor Ross asks, what is your favorite game?
In which context?
In the context of being your favorite. Let's go with PC game.
Isn't it, Jay, you need to ask better questions. More specific questions, Jay. Bad Jay. Once again, it's a choose a favorite child thing to me. I like RPGs. If you give me an RPG, an open world RPG, Witcher 3, Fallout 4, things along those lines where I could just run off and go do whatever I want, I will dump an amazing amount of time into them because I love just the freedom. I still enjoy railroad RPGs to a degree, but open world RPGs, hands down, just so much fun. Yeah,
they provide so many unique story opportunities. So they feel a little more like a tabletop game in that you can go off and do a thing that you're not tied to a specific plot path and cutscenes and nothing's blocked off. But at the same point, you get no direction about what to do and what's out of your level. And for some people, that's really great. They love the challenge of like going into a level 20 zone at level 3 and still beating it. That's very much a part of the Witcher aspect of like, you can really go to this level and they'll tell you it's it's out of your league. But if you're smart about it, or you use some gimmick, or you kite the thing, you can beat it still. But if it hits you once, don't expect to survive. And that's fun. I love the Pillars of Eternity. I'm playing currently Last Horizon Zero Dawn, which is surprisingly RPG-ish. I'm like, from the trailers, it looked like Transformers with dinosaurs, and it turned out to be something a lot more. And my wife picked it up because it was on sale, and she had a week off work from between teaching classes, and it's a redheaded character, female. So I'm like, oh, she picked it up. That's the reason why. But it turned out to be surprisingly in depth, and we've been trading off like playing the character. Like she'll get tired, she'll get frustrated with like the shooting mechanics or like skill trees and stuff, and I'm like, okay, just bam, 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 like like snipe everyone else with a bow and arrow, and so we'll trade off. But it's been surprisingly fun, and there are RPG mechanics in it, so it's been it's not as deep as Witcher 3. And the beginning part is still very on the rails, as far as like introducing the world as a girl, as a child character, doing specific things. But after that point, you can go anywhere, and you'll get murdered by the giant Tyrannosaurus robot for whatever reason. Or like the giant bison robot, but you can go, and it doesn't stop you.
Yeah, I played it. I enjoyed it. For favorite tabletop games, pen and paper, the system sucks, but Warhammer Fantasy, the first edition, completely broken in a lot of ways. But I love the dark, you're never going to win storyline of regular people having to deal with chaos over and over and over until they die or go insane, and I love that.
I've never played. I've always wanted to play a tabletop game with people. I've never found people, most because I don't have like real friends. Like I have people like you, online friends and stuff. But in my life, I've never been social enough to have like a group of people who are into the same things. Like I have school friends or work friends, or whatever. But like nobody in my life that's into the same stuff until like now with like the LitRPG community, which is part of the reason I love it so much. They're my friends at this point, I guess, which is kind of sad now that I think about it. But I've never had enough people to like do a tabletop game, even though I've bought plenty of books, like all the D&D books that come out. I'll purchase them in my teens and like read them all, and like the dungeon manuals and the Dungeon Master's Guide and the monster classes. And I planned out campaigns. I've even bought campaigns that I've never played because I don't have anyone to play with. So, but it's always been a very interesting thing to pretend it or to want to do, because the tabletop stuff really just combines social aspects with gaming stuff, and so it's a very unique mix that I've always wanted to be a part of, but I've never had the opportunity to, even though I've done the research for it. So,
well, you can do it now because you have things like webcams and stuff.
Yeah,
there are online versions of basically D&D and such, where it's actually tabletop. You have your character screen, you have your character sheet, you have your dice, and you're basically just meeting like this, and it's just like sitting around the table, except not actually in person. So I have a couple of friends who do it. So
that might be the deciding factor, that I don't actually have to go meet people, because it's always a pain in the butt to like have to drive for like an hour and a half to go do a campaign, I think, because that's how far those gaming stores were for me, and so on, basically. 2-hour drive. There aren't a lot of them around, unfortunately. Places where you can do a tabletop game, with other people of a like mind. But the internet does make it easier. I've seen programs where you can do digital versions of it, and including like a computer generated map where it's all Cloud of War, except for the space that you're in and that you're actually exploring. And I'm like, I know Dungeons and Dragons, the company, Wizards of the Coast, I think it is now. They are trying to develop a version of that. I've played the beta, and it's okay. It's never the same social aspect. I'm like, but at this point, I think I'm too old to get into it. Like the LitRPG novels, to me, kind of fulfill that portion of the role of like having that experience, I think.
You're never too old to get into it. See, what you need to do is you need to get people like me and Michael Chatfield and Michael, and just get like 6 of us together, and we'll make one of us GM, and we'll all just get together, for a couple of hours on one day and play D&D. Yeah, and you'd be amazed at the amount of character, just descriptors you can get from various people. I'm fairly certain that Cormac from his book was based off of a character that came out of a D&D game.
Yeah, no, I know there aren't a lot of us in our same areas. Like I'm really looking forward to DragonCon because that's going to be the first opportunity I have to talk to the LitRPG authors I've spoken to this way or on Facebook or whatever in community centers in real life, in real person. I've really met one other person who's into LitRPG in IRL, and that's Michael Scott. We had lunch like 3 weeks ago or whatever, and that's just because he lives 4 hours from me, and he's like, "Oh, we'll meet here," and he's like, "We'll do it," and we did it, and it was like, "Oh, it was really cool." But to meet like 7 or 8 or 20, 30, 40 people, I'm not really sure how many people were going to show up, whether they're fans or writers. I know like that there's confirmed at least 5 or 6 writers that are going to DragonCon in Atlanta. Like that's like the dream for me, at least, as a fan and as a reviewer and author, I guess myself, to meet our community. I'm looking forward to it.
That DragonCon is one of those things that I want to do.
Yeah.
But since I live all the way over on the other coast, on the west coast of the Southwest desert, oh my God, you're going to burn to death. It's much more expensive.
No, I hear you. I'm on the same coast. I'm in California.
Oh, and so, my condolences.
Yeah, I thank you.
The People's Republic of California. Yeah, you have my condolences.
Okay, we'll leave that alone, I guess. But no, it is expensive, and which is why I could never do it before. But I'm like, author money, royalties. I'm like, I can put a little bit aside. It's a business trip, right? I'm like, I'm meeting authors. So I'm like, I can try to expense some of it. And that's the only reason I can do it, basically, is because of the support of the community in buying the novels that I write and in just giving me this opportunity, either on Patreon or wherever. It's just, I can do this thing because of the community and the readers. So, thanks, guys. I'll videotape it and put together something for you. And
I will watch it.
So there you go. Okay, that's right. We were talking about audience questions. Jay Taylor also asked, what is your favorite movie? And because he's not specific, he does not get to specify. I will say, what is your favorite horror film?
Horror. Something I am not really a fan of, actually. As much as I like deep, dark games where the hero loses, I will go with a cult classic for you then, Evil Dead.
There you go. I love that one as well.
The first one, not the remake.
Oh, okay. I liked this remake better. I think it's because of the special effects. But they're both very enjoyable. They're very funny. I kind of liked Evil Dead 2. Have you seen the series Evil Dead?
I don't watch TV, which is probably why I actually get to write so much. But I have caught an episode or two over at like a friend's house or my parents' house. But Army of Darkness, it might be classified as a horror movie. If it was, it would actually be my favorite horror movie of all time. It's actually a comedy, so I love that.
No, it is. To me, it balances that line very well as being horror comedy, which is a thing for me, I guess. I'm not really big into horror movies myself, so that is definitely my flavor of horror. Not so much the torture porn or some of the modern stuff. The only thing I get as horror-y as much, I think, is Nightmare on Elm Street, like those kinds of earlier horror films from like the 80s, like those are about as horror-ish as I get. And like those really gave me nightmares as a kid growing up. And even as an adult, I'm like, I'm probably not going to watch them again, but I can appreciate the fact that they were super scary as when I did watch them.
Yeah, I never watched them. I was never a big fan of fear.
Yeah.
So
like,
I
scary enough. Yeah.
I missed them as a kid. I have still missed them. I have watched Aliens. So if Aliens is classified as a horror film, then I've watched that as a kid. And it was okay.
It always seems like sci-fi to me. Like it's not really horror. Like there's a monster and there are some surprise moments, but like the Alien franchise was never horror to me. It was more like science fiction because aliens could probably do that stuff.
Well, it for me, like the first two would probably blend the line of horror sci-fi because it very much is the unknown monster until you get later into the movie and then you actually get to see it.
Yeah.
So
I guess by that definition, Jaws is a horror film because you don't see him for most of the film, right? And so in that definition, Jaws is also horror, which I guess makes sense.
It does. It's scared. It has scared people from the ocean before, so I would consider it a horror film.
Hey, there you go. If you're scared of it, it's horror. There we go, folks. We've just defined a whole genre in several minutes. Send your complaints to, where do they send you? Oh,
No, they're sending them to you.
Books.blogspot.com. There you go, folks. Okay. I think we have a couple more questions. Adam Shook asks, what is your favorite alcoholic drink, and do you drink when you write?
I write every day of the week, and that means I go to work 5 of those days, which means I don't get to imbibe. I'm actually not big on alcohol. I come from a long family of alcoholics. We have Irish, we have German, we have Italian, and we have French. You would expect to see some kind of alcohol in their hands at all times. And my ancestors did have a drink in their hands at all times. When I do drink, which is a couple times a year for like holidays or my birthday, it is a whiskey of some sort, sometimes mixed with Coke, sometimes with just ice. It depends. But whiskey, rum, much lesser degree vodka. You can keep the cactus juice away from me, though. I drink hard liquor when I do drink.
Okay, there you go. Answered, asked and answered. I personally, I'm kind of the same mindset. I don't drink a lot either. I like to drink once, twice a year, maybe.
Yeah.
And even then, it's social, and I don't think I've ever gotten drunk in my life for the very same reasons. Like I have a family history of alcoholism, so I'm like, oh, maybe that's not the way I want to go if I want a functional, social, and I want to keep my jobs. So it's very. But anyone who wants to drink, you're cool. As long as you can handle your high, go do what you want to do. You know what I mean? I'm very much of that Kevin Smith admonition. But I do plan to drink with the guys at DragonCon because a lot of them are drinkers, and so there are plans in motion for people to get smashed. And I think one of the events, the LitRPG Gala, is at a bar. It's at I forget what it's called. It's like some nerd bar or something. And I'm like, how much am I going to get drunk, and do I want to videotape it?
If you get drunk, I want it videotaped. I want to see what you drunk looks like.
I would like to see that as well, which is why I'm like, I should probably videotape because this may never happen again. So there you go. So that's the thing. But for me, I'm a mojito guy. I like my alcohol not to taste like alcohol, oddly enough. So there you go. Okay. No, I actually have one more question. Do you have any advice for someone who's thinking of starting to write? Or another way to say it is, do you have any advice for somebody that you wish that somebody had given to you?
The only advice I would give is the same advice my grandmother gave me, which is follow your dreams. If you want to write the story you want to write. And you can drive yourself crazy by trying to make a perfect story or a story that everybody will love. And I would hate to see where I would have gone if I had gone down that road. I don't think anything I've written would ever have been even indie published if I tried to make the story into something that people would gush over. So just write what you want. Write what you love. Write what flows for you. And have the mindset of if even one person likes it, you succeeded. That was my mindset. And it was liberating to see people enjoy the book. So just write what you love.
Hey, there you go, folks. I think that's wonderful advice to end the episode and the interview on. Thank you very much for talking with me. I'm going to put up links in the show notes to all your stuff, your blog, your Facebook page. So people, if you enjoy seeing one picture on Facebook of him, you're going to want to follow him. Also, your Twitter account, which I know is pretty new. So we're expecting more great tweets from you. I think that's what they're called.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And of course, your Amazon author page where you can get all the, not that they do a really good job of notifying people, but if you want to look there, you can see all the stuff that he has. And of course, well, the links for all those books is Goodreads page, which has the same picture on Facebook. So if you haven't seen it there, you can see it there, of course, on Goodreads. That's kind of it. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we go?
I do have a Patreon page. You can find me there. Specifically because the July reward is a 50-page short story that follows some of the key NPCs from Alpha World. It follows Alistair, Stuart, Grimgar. It follows their group on their last adventure together before they settled down. That is a Patreon-only reward. I won't be putting it out as a text document anywhere else. So
there you go, folks. If you want to read that wonderful story, or to support Daniel in his work, you can go to patreon.com. And I think it's just your name, right? I mean, I'll have a link in the show notes. I'll put it up on the video.
It's DJ Schinhofen. If I normally go by my initials most places. When I started in with writing, and most of my promotion stuff was through Facebook, which is why everybody knows me as Daniel Schinhofen, and I just go ahead and put that on all my books, because oddly enough, it's my name. But if you really want to like interact with me, I am on both the society page and the non-society page for LitRPG. I'm on both of them because why wouldn't I be?
Yeah.
And if you really want to, you can send me a message, and I have no problem responding to you. If that goes for something as simple as I loved your book to, hey, these are all the problems I had with your book. Feel free. I will read them, and I will probably respond to you. Unless you're just telling me to die in a fire, in which case, yeah, not so much.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I like about community is that most of the authors I know are just like that. They're like, yeah, I'm more than happy to chat with you about your thoughts on RPGs or LitRPGs or promotional things or just my story or whatever. Or and it's like, yeah, we're people, you're people, we're all of the same thing. So why not talk to your community? It kind of makes sense to me as a writer. I'm like, why wouldn't you talk to the people who love your stuff and the people who are buying your books? Or so yeah, there you go. And there it is. Ooh. Okay, now that's it. So again, everyone, thank you for listening and for watching to the podcast and for hanging out with us for this. I think it's like 2.5, almost 3 hours, because we started before 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
We've been talking for 3 hours about just LitRPG and all this great stuff. So thank you, Ren, for sticking around for 3 hours. That's amazing. You guys are awesome. I don't know many people who would. So if you did it, if you're here, congratulations. You're a winner in my heart. But thanks.
High five for all of you.
If you want to say goodbye to everybody, we'll end the show.
Thank you for coming and listening to me ramble. Ramon was nice enough to let me do so. I think he's also maybe slightly insane for letting me do so. But if you stuck around the entire 3 hours of this, virtual high five. Really, well done, folks. Thank you, Ramon.
And thank you again, everybody, for hanging out. And until we can meet again, until we can hang out in my house and talk about LitRPG, folks, remember to go read some for yourself. Go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.